In the sweeping tapestry of ancient history, few figures emerge as both a symbol of resilience and an embodiment of strategic brilliance as Cleopatra of Pontus. Born into the storied legacy of a kingdom known for its rugged beauty and fierce independence, Cleopatra's life would come to intersect with one of the most momentous epochs in Armenian history. Her union with Tigranes the Great not only sealed a powerful political alliance, but also paved the way for the ascent of an empire that would eventually span vast regions from the rugged mountains of Armenia to the sparkling shores of the Mediterranean. Set against the backdrop of a turbulent era marked by shifting alliances, territorial conquests, and the relentless ambitions of rival powers, Cleopatra's early life in Pontus was one of both privilege and responsibility. She was raised in a court that prized both military prowess and cultural refinement, a place where diplomacy and tradition intertwined with the harsh realities of power politics. This unique environment instilled in her a keen intellect, a grace under pressure, and an unyielding determination to protect and expand her people's interests. As the daughter of a formidable dynasty, Cleopatra was no stranger to the art of statecraft. Her education was not confined merely to the literature and philosophy of her time. It extended into the strategic intricacies of governance and the subtle nuances of diplomatic relations. It is this rare combination of cultural depth and political acumen that would later define her role in the Armenian royal court, a place where she would exert influence far beyond the conventional expectations of a consort. When Cleopatra entered the life of Tigranes the Great, Armenia was on the cusp of transformation. Tigranes, a leader of formidable ambition and military skill, sought to expand his realm and secure his legacy through strategic alliances. In Cleopatra, he found not only a partner who shared his vision of a resurgent Armenian state, but also an advisor whose counsel would prove indispensable in the complex world of international politics and warfare. Their marriage, born of both love and necessity, marked the convergence of two distinct cultural and political legacies. It was a union that promised to blend the rich heritage of Pontus with the emerging might of Armenia, creating a foundation upon which a true empire could be built. In this narrative, we embark on a journey through the life and times of Cleopatra of Pontus, a woman whose quiet strength and visionary insight played a crucial role in shaping the destiny of an empire. Through her eyes, we witness the forging of alliances, the execution of daring military campaigns, and the delicate balancing of power amidst constant upheaval. This is not merely a tale of conquests and battles, but a story of how one woman's legacy endured through tumult and triumph, leaving an indelible mark on history that resonates even today. Join us as we explore the extraordinary chapters of Cleopatra's life, a narrative of ambition, intellect, and unwavering loyalty that helped sculpt one of the most influential empires of the ancient world. Cleopatra of Pontus was born into an era defined by both beauty and brutality, a time when the rugged landscapes of the Black Sea and the turbulent politics of Asia Minor shaped destinies as surely as the tides shaped the shores. Her early years, steeped in the traditions of Pontus and imbued with a rare intellectual vigor, laid the groundwork for a life that would later alter the course of Armenian and regional history. This is the story of those formative days, a journey into a world where legacy, culture, and ambition converged to create a woman whose spirit was as indomitable as the mountains that bordered her homeland. From the moment of her birth, Cleopatra was destined to bear the weight of expectation. Her family, descended from a long line of influential rulers and aristocrats in Pontus, recognized that every child was a potential beacon for the future. Her father, a man of stern countenance and even sterner principles, ruled his domain with a measured hand that balanced justice with ruthlessness. He was a patron of the arts and a devoted student of philosophy. Believing that strength was best complemented by wisdom, Cleopatra's mother, celebrated for her grace and intelligence, instilled in her daughter an appreciation for the subtleties of diplomacy and the delicate art of statecraft. In the vibrant courts of Pontus, where ancient customs blended with emerging ideas from the Hellenistic world, young Cleopatra received an education that was as rigorous as it was enlightening. Tutors versed in Greek philosophy, Persian literature, and local traditions were summoned to nurture her intellect. Lessons were not confined to the dusty scrolls of academia. They extended to the art of conversation, the poise required in public ceremonies, and even the intricacies of managing a household that functioned as a microcosm of royal governance. Her early days were spent wandering the marble halls of her family's estate, listening to the soft murmur of courtiers and the distant clang of ceremonial armor. In these corridors, every portrait and every relic whispered secrets of ancient glories and the burdens of leadership. Stories of past monarchs, both noble and flawed, filled the air. The young princess absorbed these narratives with wide-eyed fascination, each tale reinforcing the idea that power was a double-edged sword, capable of creating beauty and ushering in chaos in equal measure. Outside the walls of the palace, the natural world of Pontus offered lessons as profound as any taught by learned men. The rugged terrain, dotted with dense forests and craggy cliffs, mirrored the complexities of human endeavor. A stroll along the shores of the Black Sea was not merely a leisure pursuit but a pilgrimage to the source of inspiration for poets and generals alike. The endless horizon taught her about the limits of perception and the boundless potential of dreams. Here, in the interplay of land, sea, and sky, Cleopatra's soul was quietly tempered, much like a blade in the hands of a master smith. In the bustling marketplaces of the region, where traders from distant lands bartered spices and silk, Cleopatra encountered the raw pulse of everyday life. These interactions, though seemingly trivial, enriched her understanding of the myriad cultures that coexisted within the realm of Pontus. The voices of merchants, the laughter of children, and the fervor of local debates on governance and tradition provided her with an organic education in the human condition. It was here that she learned the value of empathy and the necessity of bridging divides, a lesson that would prove invaluable in the intricate dance of diplomacy later in her life. Her formative years were also marked by a series of personal mentors, individuals whose lives exemplified the virtues of resilience, loyalty, and intellectual curiosity. Among them was a wise philosopher who had once served at the court of a great king, a man whose memory was steeped in both triumph and tragedy. He would spend long afternoons in the palace gardens, where the scent of blooming roses mingled with the earthy aroma of ancient stone, recounting tales of empires built on both wisdom and ambition. Through his stories, Cleopatra came to understand that every decision carried weight, and that leadership demanded not only strength but also a profound sense of responsibility toward one's people. Her relationship with her own family was complex and multi-layered, while her father's stern lessons prepared her for the harsh realities of governance. It was her mother's quiet compassion and subtle defiance of convention that nurtured her inner world. Her mother, often seen as a figure of serene authority, quietly challenged the norms of their society, demonstrating that femininity and power were not mutually exclusive. This duality, the balance between the iron will of her father and the gentle wisdom of her mother, shaped Cleopatra's character in ways that would echo throughout her later life. In the private libraries of her home, filled with scrolls and texts from across the ancient world, Cleopatra discovered the power of written words. The works of Homer, Herodotus, and other great minds of antiquity became her constant companions. Each text was a window into a world of heroic struggles and philosophical debates, and she devoured them with an intensity that startled even her most learned tutors. The narratives of gods and mortals, of triumphs and tragedies, ignited in her a desire to one day leave her own mark on history. With every page turned, she internalized the lessons of the past, preparing herself for a future where the stakes were nothing short of the destiny of nations. Yet, despite the rigorous intellectual training and the cultural richness that defined her early life, Cleopatra's childhood was not without its challenges. The political landscape of Pontus was fraught with tensions, both internal rivalries within the aristocracy and external pressures from neighboring powers who coveted the wealth and strategic position of her homeland. Whispers of dissent and the occasional outbreak of violence were constant reminders that power, no matter how well managed, was always under threat. In this volatile environment, The need for vigilance became a cornerstone of her education, teaching her that beauty and grace were as potent as any weapon when wielded with precision. As Cleopatra matured, so did her understanding of the delicate interplay between culture and power. Her days were filled with lessons in music and art, as much as in strategy and statecraft. The palace was a living museum where the finest examples of sculpture, painting, and architecture from across the ancient world were on display. These treasures, relics of bygone eras, served not only as symbols of enduring beauty but also as reminders of the transient nature of human endeavors. The juxtaposition of artistic elegance and the brutal reality of political ambition left an indelible impression on the young princess. It instilled in her a lifelong appreciation for the arts, a passion that she would later nurture in the courts of Armenia, helping to foster a cultural renaissance in an empire on the rise. In the quiet moments of her youth, when the weight of expectation seemed almost too heavy to bear, Cleopatra would often retreat to the natural sanctuaries scattered throughout her family's domain. In secluded groves and by the side of babbling brooks, she found solace and a sense of renewal. It was in these moments of quiet reflection that she began to understand the true nature of leadership. She learned that a ruler must be both fierce and tender, capable of inspiring loyalty through strength as well as compassion. These experiences in nature, simple yet profound, were the seeds of a philosophy that would guide her actions in the tumultuous years to come. The cultural milieu of Pontus was one of synthesis, where Eastern mysticism met Hellenistic rationality in a dance of ideas and traditions. Cleopatra, as a product of this unique blend, was inherently a bridge between worlds. Her childhood was a mosaic of influences. The pragmatic resilience of her indigenous heritage combined with the refined intellectualism of Greek culture. This fusion of mind and spirit was not accidental. It was the deliberate design of a society that valued both the old ways and the new. In the evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky transformed into a canvas of crimson and gold, she would sit with her elders, listening intently as they recounted the legends of their ancestors. These stories, imbued with both myth and history, were a call to greatness, a reminder that every life, no matter how ordinary it might seem, was part of a larger, unfolding epic. In the halls of learning, Cleopatra encountered debates that were as fierce as any battle fought on the field. Scholars and rhetoricians sparred over interpretations of ancient texts, and in these intellectual duels, she found her own voice emerging. She began to challenge conventional wisdom, not out of rebelliousness, but from a genuine desire to understand the deeper truths behind human existence. Her inquisitive nature led her to question long-held assumptions, and gradually, she earned the respect of even the most seasoned philosophers. Her sharp mind and insatiable curiosity were evident to all who encountered her, marking her as a prodigy in a world where few women were granted such opportunities. Amidst the academic rigor and political intrigues of the court, Cleopatra's personal life also blossomed with the bonds of friendship and loyalty. From an early age, she formed close relationships with those who shared her passion for learning and her commitment to the welfare of their people. These friendships were more than mere social connections. They were alliances of the heart and mind, providing her with the support and counsel that would sustain her through the inevitable storms of life. In lively discussions over wine and poetry, she debated the merits of different philosophies, exchanged insights on governance, and even contemplated the nature of destiny itself. Such interactions not only enriched her understanding of the world, but also prepared her for the collaborative efforts that would later define her role as a consort and advisor in the Armenian court. One cannot speak of Cleopatra's early years without acknowledging the influence of the spiritual traditions that permeated her culture. The religious practices of Pontus were as diverse as its people, blending indigenous beliefs with the deities and rituals of the Hellenistic world. Temples dedicated to gods of war, wisdom, and fertility dotted the landscape, and the rituals performed within these sacred spaces were both solemn and celebratory. Cleopatra's exposure to these spiritual practices instilled in her a reverence for the divine, a sense that the forces shaping her world were guided by powers beyond mortal comprehension. This spiritual awareness would later inform her approach to leadership, where she saw herself not merely as a political actor but as a steward of a larger cosmic order. Throughout her childhood, the rhythms of daily life in Pontus were punctuated by festivals and ceremonies that celebrated both the harvest and the heroic deeds of legendary ancestors. These communal events were a blend of joy and solemnity, offering moments of collective reflection as well as exuberant celebration. For Cleopatra, each festival was a lesson in unity and resilience, a reminder that even in times of hardship, the bonds of community could provide strength and solace. The vibrant colors, stirring music, and spirited dances of these celebrations left a lasting impression on her young mind, embedding in her a deep appreciation for the power of cultural heritage. It was this same spirit that would later guide her efforts to nurture a renaissance of arts and traditions in the burgeoning Armenian Empire. Yet, as idyllic as these moments might seem, the shadow of political instability was never far from the hearts of those living in Pontus. Rival factions within the aristocracy vied for influence, and whispers of rebellion often circulated behind closed doors. Even as the young princess was being groomed for greatness, she was forced to confront the reality that loyalty and betrayal were two sides of the same coin. In discreet conversations with trusted mentors, she learned that power was as fragile as it was formidable, and that a ruler's true strength lay in the ability to inspire trust and unity among a fractured people. These early lessons in the precarious nature of authority would serve as a constant reminder that every victory in the arena of politics was hard-won, and that maintaining power required not only vision but also vigilance. As Cleopatra transitioned from childhood to adolescence, the complexities of her environment deepened. The responsibilities that came with her noble birth were no longer abstract concepts discussed in hushed tones during twilight. They had become tangible challenges that demanded her attention and resolve. With each passing year, she became more acutely aware of the sacrifices required for leadership. The luxuries of youth, carefree days, and the simple pleasures of life were gradually replaced by a dawning understanding that her destiny was intertwined with the fate of her people. This realization imbued her with a sense of purpose that transcended personal ambition. Even in her private moments, when the pressures of expectation weighed heavily upon her, Cleopatra's thoughts were consumed by a vision of a unified, prosperous realm, a vision that would one day extend far beyond the borders of Pontus. Her interactions with the elders of her family provided further insight into the intricacies of power and legacy. Long evenings were spent in the glow of oil lamps, as her father recounted the triumphs and tribulations of past generations. These narratives, rich in both factual detail and poetic embellishment, painted a picture of a world where honor and duty were the cornerstones of leadership. Through these stories, Cleopatra learned that every ruler was both a product of their time and a shaper of the future. The sacrifices made by her ancestors, and the lessons gleaned from their successes and failures, became the bedrock upon which she would later build her own legacy. In the midst of these formative experiences, there were moments of personal triumph that hinted at the remarkable potential within her. At a relatively young age, Cleopatra demonstrated an uncanny ability to resolve disputes and mediate conflicts among her peers. Whether it was a disagreement over the proper observance of a ritual or a squabble among the young members of the court, her interventions were marked by a calm authority that belied her tender years. These small acts of leadership, observed by the watchful eyes of courtiers and family alike, sowed the seeds of a reputation that would grow to define her later years. By the time she reached her late teens, Cleopatra had already begun to exhibit the qualities of a leader in the making. Her reputation as a brilliant mind and a compassionate spirit spread beyond the immediate confines of the royal court. Envoys and emissaries from neighboring regions would occasionally visit, not solely for matters of state, but also to seek counsel from the young princess whose insights were considered unusually astute for her age. Her ability to navigate the labyrinth of courtly intrigue and her emerging talent for diplomacy suggested that she was being prepared for a role far greater than that of a mere consort to a noble lineage. The challenges of her youth had molded her into someone who could understand the delicate interplay of power, tradition, and innovation, a combination that would serve as the foundation for her future endeavors. The landscape of Pontus itself, with its dramatic vistas and historical resonance, was both a character in her story and a silent mentor. The rugged mountains, cloaked in mists and mystery, spoke of ancient times when heroes and gods walked among mortals. The clear, cold streams that cut through verdant valleys offered a metaphor for clarity and persistence, qualities that Cleopatra would come to embody in her public life. Each natural element was a reminder that the forces shaping the world were as diverse and enduring as the elements of nature. It was in this crucible of beauty and brutality that her character was forged, a blend of the poetic and the pragmatic, the visionary and the vigilant, even as she navigated the formalities of court life and the demands of rigorous education. Cleopatra maintained a deep connection to the simple joys that life in Pontus afforded. There were afternoons spent riding along winding paths through the countryside, where the exhilaration of speed and the fresh scent of pine trees brought a welcome respite from the burdens of royal expectations. These moments, though fleeting, were a testament to her humanity, a reminder that beneath the mantle of nobility, she was, at heart, a person capable of delighting in the wonders of the natural world. The interplay of light and shadow in her early years was emblematic of the dual nature of her destiny. There were days filled with the radiant promise of progress and nights where the specter of political machinations loomed large. This contrast was not lost on Cleopatra, who learned early on that life was a balance of joy and sorrow, hope and despair. It was this nuanced understanding of existence that allowed her to develop a resilient spirit, a quality that would later prove indispensable in the face of adversity. As the years unfolded, the influence of Cleopatra's early education and experiences became increasingly apparent in the way she interacted with the world around her. Her intellectual pursuits were matched only by her emotional intelligence, a rare combination that set her apart from her peers. The lessons learned from the vibrant cultural tapestry of Pontus, the wisdom imparted by her family, and the stark realities of a politically charged environment converged to shape a mind that was both analytical and empathetic. This balance of reason and emotion was the hallmark of her character, a trait that would define her contributions to the empire she would eventually help shape. By the close of her formative years, Cleopatra had emerged as a figure of both promise and mystery. Her reputation, built on years of rigorous study, personal resilience, and a keen understanding of the world's complexities, signaled the arrival of a leader in the making. Though still a young woman, her presence in the corridors of power was already felt, and those who encountered her could not help but sense that she was destined for greatness. Her early life, marked by a seamless integration of cultural heritage, intellectual pursuit, and practical wisdom, had prepared her for the challenges that lay ahead, a future where her contributions would transcend the confines of her native Pontus and leave an indelible mark on the history of an emerging empire. In reflecting upon these early years, one is struck by the quiet majesty of a life lived in constant preparation for greatness. Cleopatra of Pontus was not simply born into a world of privilege. She was meticulously shaped by it, a process that demanded both sacrifice and courage. The lessons of her youth, learned amid the interplay of light and darkness, would later echo in the decisions she made as a consort, an advisor, and ultimately, a legacy in her own right. Her story is a reminder that the foundations of empire are often laid in the quiet, unassuming moments of everyday life, a lesson that resonates through the ages and continues to inspire those who seek to understand the complex interplay of history and destiny. Thus, the early years of Cleopatra of Pontus stand as a testament to the power of education, the enduring influence of cultural heritage, and the unwavering spirit of a woman who would one day help reshape the political landscape of her world. In the gentle cadence of her childhood memories and the fierce determination that simmered beneath her composed exterior, we find the blueprint of a leader whose contributions would extend far beyond the boundaries of her native land. As she prepared to step onto the larger stage of history, the the lessons of her early life, etched into her heart like the timeless inscriptions on ancient stone, would serve as a constant guide, illuminating the path toward a destiny that was as luminous as it was challenging. In every whispered lesson, in every hard-won insight gleaned from both triumph and tribulation, the young Cleopatra was being readied for the trials and triumphs that awaited her. Her early years, though filled with moments of both exuberance and sorrow, were a crucible in which the qualities of leadership, empathy, and unyielding resolve were forged. They were the prologue to a narrative that would later see her navigate the turbulent waters of politics, war, and cultural renaissance with a grace and intelligence that continues to captivate historians and laymen alike. And so, as we close this chapter of her early life, we are left with a portrait of Cleopatra of Pontus as a child of both light and shadow, a young woman whose spirit, nurtured in the crucible of a vibrant yet volatile world, was destined to shine with the brilliance of a guiding star. The lessons of these early days, laden with the wisdom of the past and the promise of a glorious future, would later serve as the bedrock upon which she built not only her own legacy but also the foundation of an empire that would reverberate through the annals of time. In the end, the early years of Cleopatra were more than just a prelude to political maneuverings and diplomatic triumphs. They were a testament to the enduring power of culture, education, and the human spirit. Through the lens of her youth, we glimpse the intricate interplay of destiny and design, a reminder that every great leader is first and foremost a product of their time, shaped by the myriad influences that converge to create a life worth remembering. As she moved from the sheltered corridors of her familial home into the wider, often unforgiving world, Cleopatra carried with her the indelible marks of her early experiences, marks that would later define her as both a visionary and a steadfast guardian of her people's heritage. Thus, in the rich tapestry of history, the early years of Cleopatra of Pontus emerge as a critical chapter, a time when the seeds of leadership were sown amid the vibrant interplay of knowledge, nature, and the unyielding demands of destiny. It is a story of a young woman whose life was a delicate balancing act between the inherited legacy of a storied past and the boundless potential of an uncharted future. A future where her influence would extend far beyond the familiar landscapes of Pontus and into the heart of an empire on the rise. As we now transition from the innocence of youth to the inevitability of destiny, we carry with us the understanding that every moment, every lesson learned in those formative years, contributed to the making of a woman who was as much a product of her environment as she was a force that would eventually reshape it. The early life of Cleopatra of Pontus, with its blend of beauty, intellect, and quiet determination, stands as a testament to the timeless truth that the greatest legacies are often built on the simplest, yet most profound, moments of understanding and growth. In the tumultuous years when alliances were forged and empires were built upon the shifting sands of ambition and necessity, the union between Cleopatra of Pontus and Tigranes the Great emerged as one of the most consequential and carefully orchestrated political marriages of the ancient Near East. This was not a simple tale of romance, but a story of two powerful figures whose destinies converged in an arrangement that would shape the fate of nations. The narrative of their meeting, negotiation, and eventual union is replete with moments of intrigue, calculated risk, and subtle diplomacy, a microcosm of the broader political dynamics of the era. The initial chapters of their acquaintance unfolded in the shadow of looming conflicts and precarious alliances. Tigranes, already a formidable military leader and an astute ruler with a keen eye for both conquest and consolidation, recognized early on that the survival and expansion of his emerging Armenian state depended not only on battlefield valor but also on the strength of his alliances. Cleopatra, on the other hand, was groomed in the sophisticated courts of Pontus, a region steeped in a tradition of resilience, where art and military strategy intermingled, and where every gesture carried the weight of centuries of cultural legacy. In her, Tigranes saw more than a consort. He saw a partner whose intellect and lineage could bring to Armenia the crucial link to the powerful traditions of Pontus. The negotiations that preceded their marriage were as delicate as they were determined. Envoys from both courts convened in secretive councils, away from the prying eyes of rival factions. In these meetings, the terms of the alliance were laid out with meticulous care, a marriage contract that was as much about the exchange of cultural capital and strategic favors as it was about the personal union of two individuals. Cleopatra's father, a seasoned diplomat and a man who had weathered many storms in the volatile politics of Asia Minor, understood that his daughter's hand in marriage would not be given lightly. He demanded assurances that the alliance with Tigranes would serve the broader interests of Pontus, ensuring that his family's legacy would be honored and that the new union would pave the way for mutual prosperity. Tigranes, ever the pragmatic strategist, saw in Cleopatra the perfect embodiment of what his state needed at that juncture, a symbol of unity between two powerful cultural realms. In the halls of the Armenian court, he had long admired the potential of integrating the refined traditions of Pontus into the rugged yet ambitious framework of his own kingdom. The marriage was to be a merging of strengths. Tigranes' martial prowess and state-building acumen combined with Cleopatra's cultivated intellect, diplomatic skill, and the storied heritage of her family. It was a union designed to not only secure political alliances, but also to inspire confidence among his subjects and to intimidate his adversaries by demonstrating that Armenia was capable of sophisticated statecraft. The ceremony that sealed their union was a dazzling affair that blended the customs of both Pontus and Armenia. It took place in a grand setting, where the sumptuousness of Hellenistic art met the austere elegance of Armenian tradition. Elaborate processions wound through ancient courtyards, and the air was filled with the sense of exotic spices and the strains of lyre music. At the heart of the ceremony, beneath a canopy bedecked with symbols of both cultures, a mixture of intricate Pontic motifs and robust Armenian insignia, the couple exchanged vows that were as much a pledge to their respective peoples as they were an affirmation of personal commitment. In that moment, history itself seemed to pause, as if acknowledging the significance of a union that was destined to resonate through the ages. For Cleopatra, the transition into the Armenian court was both exhilarating and challenging. Accustomed to the refined yet complex rituals of Pontic royalty, she now found herself navigating an environment where the stakes were higher and the expectations more demanding. Tigranes, though a partner in the political arena, was also a man of great ambition and an uncompromising vision for the future of his empire. Their early interactions were marked by long conversations in the quiet recesses of the palace, where strategy and philosophy intermingled with personal reflection. It was during these moments that Cleopatra's natural brilliance shone through. Her sharp mind, honed by years of rigorous education, quickly adapted to the new political landscape. She became both an advisor and a mediator, offering insights that balanced the often unilateral approach of military might with the softer, yet equally powerful, tools of diplomacy and cultural persuasion. The impact of their marriage on the geopolitical stage was immediate and far-reaching. With Cleopatra by his side, Tigranes was able to consolidate his position not merely through conquests on the battlefield, but also by securing alliances with other influential kingdoms. The marriage served as a symbolic bridge, opening channels of communication with the Hellenistic world and earning the respect of neighboring states that had long regarded Armenia with a mixture of admiration and wariness. Emissaries from distant lands arrived at the Armenian court bearing gifts and proposals of alliance, all keen to participate in a network that now spanned the regions from the rugged mountains of Armenia to the sophisticated courts of Pontus. Cleopatra's presence lent an air of legitimacy to these negotiations, her reputation as a learned and capable royal consort preceding her like a herald of a new era. Yet, as with any union forged in the crucible of political necessity, there were challenges and tensions that had to be navigated with care. The marriage was not universally welcomed by all members of the aristocracy. Some conservative elements within the Armenian nobility regarded the Pontic influence as a potential threat to their traditional ways, while others feared that the cultural blending might dilute the distinctly Armenian identity. In the months following the ceremony, whispered debates and veiled criticisms began to circulate within the corridors of power. Tigranes, however, proved to be a master of managing dissent. With Cleopatra's steady counsel, He launched a series of initiatives aimed at integrating the best of both cultures, promoting art, literature, and administrative reforms that drew on the strengths of the Pontic tradition while honoring the deep-rooted customs of Armenia. One of the early challenges that tested their alliance came in the form of a border dispute with a neighboring state. A minor skirmish quickly threatened to escalate into a full-blown conflict, and it was in this critical moment that the true value of their political marriage was revealed. Tigranes' generals were poised to respond with force, but Cleopatra urged caution and advocated for a diplomatic approach. Drawing on her experience in the courts of Pontus, she proposed a series of negotiations that would both address the grievances of the aggrieved parties and establish a precedent for resolving disputes through dialogue rather than bloodshed. Her measured words and well-reasoned arguments eventually swayed the council, and a carefully crafted peace treaty was brokered. A treaty that not only defused the immediate crisis but also set the stage for long-term cooperation between the rival states. This early triumph was a testament to the power of their union, demonstrating that when personal commitment and political strategy were intertwined, even the most volatile challenges could be overcome. Beyond the immediate political and military implications, the marriage of Cleopatra and Tigranes had profound cultural ramifications. In a period when the exchange of ideas was as vital as the exchange of armies, their union catalyzed a vibrant cross-pollination of artistic and intellectual traditions. Cleopatra introduced elements of Pontic art and literature to the Armenian court, sparking a renaissance that celebrated not only the achievements of the past but also the promise of a more interconnected future. Scholars, poets, and artists found new inspiration in the blending of motifs, Hellenistic elegance interwoven with the rugged majesty of Armenian landscapes. Public festivals and private salons alike became stages for the creative expression of this emerging cultural synthesis, reinforcing the notion that strength lay not only in military conquest but also in the richness of human expression. Amid these public achievements, the personal relationship between Cleopatra and Tigranes evolved into a partnership marked by mutual respect and a shared vision for their people. While the marriage was initially conceived as a strategic alliance, it soon became apparent that both leaders possessed a rare capacity for empathy and foresight. In private chambers, away from the formalities of state, the two would engage in long, reflective discussions about the nature of power, the responsibilities of leadership, and the future they envisioned for Armenia and its neighbors. Tigranes, known for his unyielding determination on the battlefield, found in Cleopatra a counterbalance, a voice that reminded him of the importance of measured governance and the need to consider the human cost of conflict. For her part, Cleopatra, whose intellect had been nurtured in the cultured courts of Pontus, was invigorated by Tigranes' courage and his unwavering commitment to his vision of a resurgent Armenian Empire. Together, they forged a path that was as much about the welfare of their subjects as it was about the accumulation of power. In the early years of their marriage, their collaborative spirit bore tangible results. Cleopatra took on the role of a de facto minister of culture and foreign affairs, advising Tigranes on the subtleties of diplomatic protocol and the strategic value of cultural patronage. Her proposals for building libraries, supporting local artisans, and hosting symposiums on governance and philosophy were not merely exercises in vanity. They were strategic investments in the intellectual and moral capital of the state. Tigranes, ever pragmatic, recognized that an enlightened citizenry would be a bulwark against internal strife and external threats. The reforms they initiated laid the groundwork for an administrative system that was both innovative and resilient, a system that would enable Armenia to flourish even in the face of the turbulent forces that defined the era. The marriage also had a ripple effect on the regional balance of power. As news of the union spread across the ancient world, potential adversaries began to reassess their calculations. The alliance between Pontus and Armenia signaled a shift in the dynamics of power, a shift that reverberated from the dusty trade routes of Asia Minor to the glittering maritime cities along the Mediterranean coast. In diplomatic circles, the combined strength of Tigranes and Cleopatra was discussed in hushed tones and with cautious admiration. Their marriage was seen as a harbinger of a new era, one in which traditional boundaries would be redrawn and old rivalries reconfigured in light of this potent new partnership. Perhaps one of the most telling indicators of the success of their political marriage was the way in which it transformed the very identity of the Armenian court. Where once the seat of power had been defined solely by martial might and territorial expansion, it now blossomed into a center of learning and cultural innovation. Royal decrees were issued that emphasized the importance of education, artistic expression, and the integration of diverse cultural influences. This progressive vision, nurtured by Cleopatra's influence, resonated deeply with the people and helped to forge a sense of unity and pride among the citizens of a growing empire. The synthesis of Pontic and Armenian traditions was not without its critics, but over time, the benefits of such a fusion became undeniable. The arts flourished, trade expanded, and the empire's diplomatic clout grew stronger with each passing year. In the midst of these grand developments, the personal sacrifices inherent in political alliances were never far from the forefront of Cleopatra's mind. The decision to leave behind the familiar embrace of Pontus and to fully immerse herself in a foreign court was not made lightly. There were moments of quiet melancholy and private reflection, when the weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon her shoulders. In the solitude of her private quarters, she would pore over letters and documents from her homeland, allowing herself brief moments of nostalgia for the land of her birth. Yet, even in these moments of introspection, her resolve only grew stronger. She understood that her destiny, and that of her new people, was irrevocably intertwined with the future of Armenia. Her personal sacrifices were thus transformed into a larger, more noble purpose: the creation of a legacy that would outlast the transient vicissitudes of fortune. As the months turned into years, the political marriage between Cleopatra and Tigranes evolved from a strategic necessity into a genuine partnership founded on trust, mutual admiration, and a shared vision for the future. Their collaboration was not without its challenges. Rival factions, external threats, and internal dissent tested the strength of their union. But each obstacle was met with a combination of tactical brilliance and personal fortitude that became the hallmark of their reign. Together, they navigated the labyrinthine world of ancient diplomacy, turning potential crises into opportunities for growth and reaffirming the principle that unity and understanding could triumph over discord and division. In recounting the saga of their union, one cannot overlook the profound symbolism that permeated every aspect of their marriage. Cleopatra, with her cultured elegance and incisive intellect, became the personification of a new era, a time when the confluence of diverse traditions and the melding of disparate cultures promised not only political stability but also a renaissance of human achievement. Tigranes, for his part, was transformed by her presence. No longer was he solely the warrior king known for his conquests. He evolved into a statesman who appreciated the transformative power of diplomacy and culture. Their relationship redefined what it meant to rule, demonstrating that leadership was not confined to the battlefield but was also a delicate art of building bridges between peoples, cultures, and ideologies. The story of Cleopatra and Tigranes, then, is a multifaceted tapestry woven from threads of ambition, love, sacrifice, and vision. It is a narrative that defies simple categorization, a tale that is as much about the personal growth of two remarkable individuals as it is about the grand sweep of history. Their marriage, conceived in the crucible of political necessity, ultimately transcended its origins to become a beacon of hope and progress in an age marked by uncertainty and strife. In the hallowed halls of the Armenian court, where the echoes of ancient wisdom mingled with the fervor of new ideas, the legacy of their union took root and flourished, setting a precedent for generations to come. Even as challenges loomed on the horizon, threats from rival empires, internal power struggles, and the ever-present specter of rebellion, the alliance forged by Cleopatra and Tigranes served as a stabilizing force, a constant reminder that unity was the greatest defense against the forces of chaos. In the face of adversity, their partnership remained unbroken, a living testament to the idea that true strength lies not in the accumulation of power for its own sake, but in the ability to harness that power for the collective good of one's people. In later years, as historians and scholars would reflect on the rise of the Armenian Empire, the marriage of Cleopatra and Tigranes would be remembered not merely as a political arrangement, but as a transformative event that redefined the boundaries of culture, diplomacy, and governance. Their story resonated through the corridors of time, a narrative of two souls united by fate and duty, whose legacy was etched in the annals of history through acts of courage, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to a shared dream. Thus, the political marriage between Cleopatra of Pontus and Tigranes the Great stands as one of history's most compelling examples of how alliances can reshape the destiny of nations. It was a union that brought together not only two individuals of exceptional caliber, but also the hopes and aspirations of two peoples, merging the refined traditions of Pontus with the rugged resilience of Armenia. In this confluence of destinies, the seeds of a vast empire were sown, a legacy that would endure long after the echoes of ancient battles had faded into the mists of time. As the sun set on that pivotal chapter of their lives, the Armenian court shimmered with the promise of a new dawn, a dawn in which the values of culture, diplomacy, and enlightened leadership would serve as the cornerstone of an enduring civilization. The marriage of Cleopatra and Tigranes, with its blend of passion, intellect, and strategic foresight, was not simply an event in the annals of history. It was the genesis of a transformative era, one that would reverberate across centuries and continue to inspire the hearts and minds of those who believe in the power of unity to overcome the divisions of the past. In the end, the legacy of their union is measured not only in the territorial gains of an empire, but also in the cultural and intellectual revival that swept through the lands they ruled. It is a legacy that endures in the architecture, literature, and art of the period, a legacy that testifies to the enduring truth that when disparate worlds come together in a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect, the possibilities are as boundless as the dreams of those who dare to imagine a better future. And so, the political marriage of Cleopatra of Pontus and Tigranes the Great remains a timeless reminder of the intricate interplay between personal destiny and historical forces, a narrative that continues to captivate the imagination of scholars, historians, and dreamers alike. Their story is a beacon of hope in a world often torn apart by conflict, a testament to the idea that even in the darkest of times, the union of strength and wisdom can light the way to a brighter tomorrow. In the wake of a triumphant union that had redefined political landscapes, a new chapter dawned in the history of Armenia, one in which the royal court evolved into a vibrant center of power, culture, and innovation, as Tigranes the Great set his eyes on the expansion and consolidation of his empire. Cleopatra of Pontus emerged as an indispensable architect of the court's transformation. Together, they envisioned a royal environment that would not only reflect the might of their reign, but also serve as an incubator for intellectual and cultural revival. Under their guidance, the court became a dynamic forum where ideas and traditions intermingled, and where diplomacy, art, and scholarship found a common stage. From her first days in the Armenian court, Cleopatra's presence was transformative. Drawing upon the refined traditions of Pontus, she introduced a level of sophistication and cultural depth that had hitherto been absent. No longer was the court merely a collection of advisors and military commanders. It was now a living, breathing organism that thrived on the confluence of art, literature, and philosophy. In her vision, the court was a sanctuary for the mind and spirit, a place where the wisdom of the ancient world was not only preserved but actively nurtured. At the heart of this transformation was Cleopatra's belief that a ruler's strength emanated not solely from military might, but also from the intellectual and moral fortitude of his people. She initiated a series of reforms aimed at elevating the cultural standards of the court. Libraries were established, filled with scrolls and manuscripts from across the known world. Greek treatises, Persian epics, and indigenous Armenian chronicles all found a home within these hallowed walls. Scholars were invited from distant lands, their lectures and debates turning the royal court into an open forum of ideas. These gatherings were not merely for show. They were deliberate efforts to weave a fabric of shared knowledge that could guide statecraft and governance. The architectural design of the court itself was reimagined under Cleopatra's direction. Gone were the days of austere halls and sparse decorations. Instead, the palace was adorned with intricate mosaics, statues that celebrated both myth and heroism, and frescoes that captured the rich tapestry of human endeavor. Each element was carefully chosen to reflect a dual heritage: the classical refinement of the Hellenistic world and the robust, enduring traditions of Armenia. In this setting, the court was transformed into a living museum, a symbol of unity between cultures, where every corner told a story of aspiration, conquest, and renaissance. One of the most influential contributions of Cleopatra was her reorganization of the administrative apparatus of the court, recognizing that effective governance required not only a brilliant leader but also a capable and inspired bureaucracy. She oversaw the creation of advisory councils that blended seasoned military leaders with learned philosophers, poets, and legal experts. This amalgamation of minds proved revolutionary. Debates on state policy were enriched by perspectives from diverse fields, and decisions were increasingly informed by a balance of strategic insight and ethical considerations. Through these councils, the court became a crucible for innovative policies that resonated with both the common citizen and the aristocratic elite. The cultural programs she championed were equally ambitious. Cleopatra believed that art and literature had the power to unify disparate peoples, to heal old wounds, and to create a shared sense of identity among the citizens of the empire. Festivals were organized with elaborate pageantry, a synthesis of Pontic exuberance and Armenian solemnity. Music, theater, and poetry recitals became regular events, turning the court into a stage for creative expression. These events were not mere entertainments. They were strategic endeavors designed to promote civic pride and to foster loyalty among the diverse communities that now comprise the empire. The arts, under Cleopatra's patronage, became a subtle but potent tool of statecraft. In addition to the formal structures of the court, it was the daily rituals and personal interactions that truly showcased Cleopatra's vision. She made it a point to engage with members of the court from all levels, from high-ranking officials to the servants who tended to the palace gardens. Her genuine interest in the lives of those around her set a tone of inclusivity and respect. In private audiences, she listened attentively to concerns, offered counsel, and even resolved disputes with a wisdom that belied her status. This approach not only humanized the royal establishment but also fostered a culture of loyalty and trust, qualities that were essential in an era of perpetual uncertainty and shifting allegiances. Cleopatra also understood the importance of symbols and ceremonies in consolidating power. She orchestrated elaborate rituals that celebrated not just the achievements of the state, but the unity of its people. One particularly memorable ceremony involved a grand procession through the capital, during which representatives from various regions presented tokens of their local heritage. The event was a visual manifestation of the empire's diversity and its ability to harmonize different cultures under a common banner. Cleopatra's role in these ceremonies was not that of a passive observer. She was the emblem of a new era, an icon of both continuity and transformation. Her image, portrayed in statues and coinage, came to symbolize the enlightened and inclusive governance that had become the hallmark of Tigranes' reign. While the establishment of the royal court was a triumph in itself, it was also a subtle assertion of power, a declaration that the new order was built on principles that transcended mere conquest. Cleopatra's efforts at the court resonated beyond the palace walls, reaching into the farthest corners of the empire. Her vision influenced the legal codes that were being drafted, the educational reforms that were initiated, and even the diplomatic protocols that governed interactions with foreign emissaries. In a world where might was often equated with martial strength, Cleopatra demonstrated that the true measure of a state lay in the strength of its ideas, the vibrancy of its culture, and the resilience of its institutions. Her influence was particularly evident in the sphere of foreign relations. Ambassadors arriving at the court were immediately struck by the cultural sophistication that permeated every interaction. Dressed in garments that reflected both local tradition and Hellenistic elegance, Cleopatra herself would often preside over audiences, her calm yet commanding presence setting the tone for negotiations. Her ability to converse in multiple languages, coupled with her deep understanding of diverse cultural norms, made her an ideal diplomat. She forged alliances with neighboring states not through the threat of war, but through the promise of shared prosperity and mutual respect, a radical departure from the norm in a region long defined by conflict. The transformation of the court also had a profound impact on the internal dynamics of the empire. With the integration of varied cultural influences, the court became a microcosm of the larger society, a space where new ideas could flourish without fear of suppression. Intellectual salons, reminiscent of the great academies of Athens, became hubs of discussion and debate. Here, scholars debated the philosophies of the past while contemplating the future of the state. These gatherings were marked by a spirit of inquiry and openness that had not been seen in the rigid hierarchies of previous regimes. In time, the court's culture of intellectual freedom and artistic expression would serve as a model for other regions, elevating the entire empire to a new level of sophistication. Despite the many challenges that lay in establishing such an ambitious vision, Cleopatra's unwavering resolve and innate talent for leadership ensured that the royal court evolved into a beacon of progress. Her reforms were not without their detractors. Conservative elements within the aristocracy initially balked at the dramatic changes she introduced. Yet, even in the face of opposition, Cleopatra's pragmatic approach, grounded in reason, empathy, and a deep commitment to the welfare of her people, slowly won over the skeptics. Over time, even the most reluctant courtiers came to recognize that the fusion of ideas and cultures was not a dilution of tradition, but rather its evolution, a necessary step in a world that was rapidly changing. As the years passed, the royal court stood as a living testament to the power of visionary leadership. It was no longer merely a seat of power, but a vibrant arena where history was being written in real time, a place where every debate, every celebration, and every quiet moment of reflection contributed to the unfolding narrative of a state in transformation. Cleopatra's influence was felt not just in the grand ceremonies and political reforms, but in the very air of the palace, in the spirit of inquiry that permeated every corridor, and in the sense of shared destiny that bound its inhabitants together. In many ways, the establishment of the royal court under Cleopatra's guidance was a revolution in itself. It redefined the relationship between the ruler and the ruled, blending the personal with the political, the artistic with the administrative. It was a delicate balance, a synthesis of old traditions and new aspirations that proved essential to the long-term stability and prosperity of the empire. Under her stewardship, the court became a model for enlightened governance, one where the pursuit of knowledge and beauty was as integral to statecraft as the wielding of power. The legacy of these transformative years at the royal court continued to reverberate long after the echoes of ancient debates and ceremonial processions had faded. Historians and chroniclers would later look back on this period as a golden age, a time when the union of diverse cultures, nurtured by the enlightened leadership of Cleopatra and Tigranes, set the stage for an empire that was as resilient as it was brilliant. The reforms and cultural achievements of the court became enduring symbols of what could be achieved when power was exercised with vision, humility, and a deep respect for the heritage of all peoples. Thus, the establishment of the royal court was not merely a structural or administrative change. It was a profound reimagining of what a state could be. It was the convergence of art, intellect, and governance into a single, dynamic entity that both honored the past and embraced the future. And at the heart of this transformation was Cleopatra of Pontus, whose enduring legacy as a patron of culture, a shrewd diplomat, and a visionary leader would continue to inspire generations long after the sun had set on that remarkable era. As the sun rose over a land poised on the brink of transformation, The empire that Tigranes the Great envisioned began to take shape, a vision in which military prowess, diplomatic finesse, and cultural enlightenment converged to form the backbone of a state unlike any that had come before. This was the era of the Armenian Empire's rapid expansion, a time when the forces of destiny and strategy intermingled in a way that elevated the nation from a regional power to a formidable empire whose influence stretched across continents. At the heart of this metamorphosis was the seamless integration of Cleopatra, of Pontus's enlightened counsel, and Tigranes' indomitable spirit, a partnership that would prove critical in overcoming the myriad challenges posed by a volatile geopolitical landscape. From the very outset, the ambitious military campaigns spearheaded by Tigranes were not executed in isolation but were the culmination of carefully deliberated strategies that bore the unmistakable imprint of Cleopatra's influence. Behind the scenes, while Tigranes led his armies into battle, Cleopatra worked tirelessly to craft the diplomatic framework that would support these conquests. Her role as advisor went far beyond the confines of the palace. She was the architect of alliances, negotiating treaties with neighboring states and ensuring that the expanding empire was not only a force of might but also a beacon of cultural and intellectual achievement. One of the most significant aspects of this period was the manner in which Cleopatra's counsel transformed the dynamics of power within the empire. Her deep understanding of both Pontic and Hellenistic traditions allowed her to introduce a sophisticated form of statecraft that was as much about winning hearts and minds as it was about territorial gains. Under her guidance, diplomatic emissaries were dispatched to far-flung regions, tasked with forging alliances that would bolster Armenia's position against its rivals. These missions were often perilous, fraught with the dangers of treacherous mountain passes and the uncertainties of foreign courts. Yet Cleopatra's steady hand and eloquent speech turned potential adversaries into reluctant allies. In many instances, the treaties she helped negotiate included cultural exchange clauses that would pave the way for the dissemination of art, literature, and philosophy, elements that enriched the empire and provided a foundation for lasting peace. The military campaigns themselves were a study in the harmonious interplay of strategy and adaptability. Tigranes, celebrated as one of the era's most brilliant tacticians, led his armies through a series of campaigns that expanded Armenian borders from the rugged highlands to the fertile plains and coastal cities of the Mediterranean. Each conquest was meticulously planned, with Cleopatra's insights often playing a decisive role in choosing when to engage, when to negotiate, and when to withdraw. Her diplomatic interventions ensured that the victories on the battlefield were not isolated incidents of martial success but part of a broader, sustainable strategy for empire building. The spoils of war were reinvested in infrastructure, education, and the arts, a testament to a vision that transcended the immediate demands of conquest to embrace the long-term welfare of the state. The cultural renaissance that accompanied the territorial expansion was as remarkable as the military successes. Cleopatra's influence was palpable in the thriving arts and sciences that began to permeate every facet of Armenian society. The royal court, once reimagined as a vibrant forum for intellectual and artistic exchange, became the epicenter of a cultural revolution that saw the construction of grand libraries, the patronage of poets, and the commissioning of sculptures and mosaics that celebrated both the mythic past and the promising future of Armenia. These cultural endeavors were not mere ornamentation. They were integral to the empire's identity, a powerful statement that strength was measured not only in the breadth of one's dominion but also in the depth of one's cultural and intellectual legacy. During this period of rapid growth, Cleopatra emerged as a force of nature in her own right. With every diplomatic success and every strategic maneuver, she reinforced the notion that the true strength of an empire lay in the synthesis of military might and enlightened governance. Her vision was one of inclusivity and progress, a state where diverse peoples and traditions could coexist under a single, unifying banner. This was reflected in the very fabric of Armenian society, where different languages, customs, and religions were not sources of division but opportunities for enrichment. Cleopatra's initiatives fostered an environment in which the arts flourished. Education was revered, and the collective memory of the people was carefully preserved and celebrated. One of the defining moments of this era was a series of campaigns that saw Armenian forces engage in battles against formidable foes, including rival kingdoms that had long maintained a stranglehold on regional trade routes and cultural exchange. In these decisive moments, when the fate of the empire hung in the balance, Cleopatra's presence was both a calming influence and a source of strategic innovation. While Tigranes rallied his warriors with the roar of battle, Cleopatra worked behind the scenes to secure critical supplies, coordinate alliances, and ensure that the political ramifications of each engagement would strengthen rather than destabilize the empire. Her efforts in these trying times were a testament to her unwavering commitment to a vision that saw beyond the immediate chaos of war to the broader objective of a stable and enlightened state. This period also witnessed a remarkable transformation in the administrative apparatus of the empire. Recognizing that the challenges of governing an expansive territory required more than brute force, Cleopatra championed the establishment of a sophisticated bureaucratic system that emphasized merit, accountability, and cultural integration. Advisors from a myriad of backgrounds, philosophers, military strategists, legal experts, and poets were brought together to form councils that could address the multifaceted issues of governance. Their deliberations, often conducted in the cool light of dawn or the quiet hours of the night, laid the groundwork for policies that would promote economic prosperity, social cohesion, and artistic innovation. In many ways, the administrative reforms initiated during this time set a new standard for governance in the ancient world, one that combined the best elements of Eastern and Hellenistic traditions in a way that was both pragmatic and visionary. The rapid territorial expansion and the flourishing of cultural institutions had a synergistic effect on the Armenian Empire, creating a positive feedback loop that reinforced the state's burgeoning identity. As the empire grew, so too did its reputation as a center of learning, art, and progressive governance. The cities that were established or transformed during this era became hubs of commerce and creativity, their marketplaces echoing with the sounds of diverse languages and the rhythms of a cosmopolitan society. Public spaces were adorned with statues and monuments that commemorated both the heroes of the past and the visionary leaders of the present. This physical and cultural transformation not only enhanced the quality of life for the empire's citizens, but also served as a powerful deterrent to external aggressors, who now faced an adversary as culturally unified as it was militarily formidable. Perhaps one of the most enduring legacies of this period was the way in which the successes of the Armenian Empire were inextricably linked to the legacy of Cleopatra's diplomatic and cultural initiatives. Her influence extended beyond the palace walls and the battlefields. It was felt in the everyday lives of the people, in the art that adorned their homes, and in the education that nurtured their minds, in the public squares and along the bustling trade routes. Citizens spoke of a new era in which the arts and sciences were not the exclusive domain of the elite but were accessible to all. This democratization of knowledge and culture was a radical departure from previous eras, and it helped to foster a sense of national pride and identity that would endure long after the immediate conquests had faded into history. As the empire reached the zenith of its power, the partnership between Cleopatra and Tigranes stood as a beacon of what could be achieved when visionary leadership was combined with the enduring strength of cultural heritage. The vast expanses of territory, now unified under a banner that celebrated both martial valor and artistic excellence, were a testament to the belief that an empire's true greatness lay not merely in the land it controlled but in the spirit it nurtured among its people. The military victories and territorial gains, while significant, were only part of a larger narrative, a narrative that celebrated the revival of ancient wisdom, the promotion of intellectual discourse, and the creation of a society where art and beauty were as revered as the laws that governed it. In the grand tapestry of history, the rise of the Armenian Empire during this transformative period is remembered not only for its conquests and strategic brilliance, but also for its bold experiment in governance and cultural synthesis. Cleopatra of Pontus, with her unparalleled blend of intellect, diplomacy, and empathy, played a pivotal role in steering this experiment toward success. Her contributions, though often conducted in the shadows of the military campaigns, were vital in shaping an empire that balanced the ferocity of battle with the grace of enlightened statecraft. The legacy of this era is etched in the annals of history, a reminder that the strength of an empire is measured not solely by its territorial expanse or the might of its armies, but by its capacity to uplift the human spirit, to foster knowledge and creativity, and to unite diverse peoples under a common banner of shared purpose and vision. As the Armenian Empire ascended to its zenith, it carried with it the indelible imprint of Cleopatra's vision, a vision that recognized that true power was a fusion of force and finesse, a synthesis of tradition and innovation. In the end, the rise of the Armenian Empire was not a fleeting moment of triumph, but the beginning of a legacy that would endure for centuries. It was a time when the roads of Asia Minor and the shores of the Mediterranean bore witness to a renaissance of culture, art, and intellectual inquiry, a renaissance that owed much to the quiet, unwavering determination of a woman who dared to dream of a world united by both strength and beauty. Cleopatra of Pontus and Tigranes the Great, through their partnership, not only redefined the contours of power but also set a precedent for how empires should be built, on the foundations of mutual respect, enlightened governance, and a belief in the transformative power of culture. In the unfolding saga of an empire built on the dual pillars of martial prowess and enlightened governance, there came a time when the true mettle of leadership was tested on the bloodied fields of battle and in the hushed corridors of strategic deliberation. As the Armenian Empire expanded its borders, not only through conquests on the battlefield but also through the artful negotiation of alliances and treaties, the need for sound military counsel grew ever more urgent. It was during these pivotal years that Cleopatra of Pontus emerged as an indispensable strategist, whose wisdom in the art of war was as formidable as the armies led by Tigranes the Great. In the crucible of conflict, where the clangor of swords and the thunder of chariots mingled with the murmur of calculated plans, Cleopatra's guidance helped shape campaigns that would forever alter the balance of power in the ancient Near East. The campaigns of this era were waged in landscapes as varied as the ambitions that fueled them. From the rugged mountain passes that defined the borders of Armenia to the fertile plains of contested territories, every theater of war demanded a unique blend of brute force and delicate strategy. Cleopatra, drawing upon the vast repository of military knowledge inherited from both the Hellenistic and indigenous traditions, recognized that success on the battlefield was not achieved merely by the size of an army or the sharpness of its blades. It was the product of a disciplined mind that understood the interplay of geography, logistics, and human nature. Her counsel was sought in every critical juncture, whether in the quiet before the storm of battle or in the fevered intensity of a council of war where every decision carried the weight of destiny. In the early days of the conflict, when the specter of rebellion and external threat loomed large over the empire, Cleopatra convened a series of secret councils with Tigranes' most trusted generals and advisors. In these dimly lit chambers, where maps were spread across polished tables and the soft glow of oil lamps revealed the determined expressions of men hardened by years of conflict, she would outline her visions of tactical brilliance. With a calm yet commanding presence, she spoke of the need to exploit natural barriers and use the terrain as an ally. The mountains and rivers, she would intone, are not mere features of the landscape but formidable weapons in their own right. We must learn to fight with the land as much as against an enemy. Her words, delivered in a measured tone that belied the gravity of the challenges ahead, resonated deeply with those assembled. Generals who had once relied solely on the brute strength of their legions found themselves inspired by her integrative approach, a fusion of ancient wisdom and innovative tactics. One memorable campaign saw Cleopatra's strategic acumen put to the ultimate test when a coalition of rival states threatened to seize a critical mountain pass that served as the empire's lifeline for trade and communication. Tigranes had amassed his forces at the base of the formidable peaks. Yet the enemy's numbers were considerable, and the prospect of a prolonged siege was a source of anxiety for even the most battle-hardened veterans. In the pre-dawn hours, as a cloak of fog shrouded the rugged terrain, Cleopatra proposed a daring plan that would change the course of the confrontation. Rather than launching a headlong assault on the heavily fortified enemy positions, she advised that the army be divided into smaller, agile units that would scale the cliffs under the cover of darkness. Her plan was to infiltrate the enemy camp from an unexpected direction, seize control of their command center, and then use the ensuing chaos to break their lines from within. The generals, initially skeptical of such an unconventional strategy, soon found themselves persuaded by the clarity and conviction in her reasoning. "Let us use stealth and guile where brute force may falter," she urged. "Our enemy expects a straightforward confrontation. We must turn their assumptions against them." Under her guidance, specialized detachments comprising elite scouts, mountain climbers, and cavalry well-versed in rapid maneuvers were deployed under the cover of night. The plan was executed with breathtaking precision, while the main army feigned a frontal assault to occupy the enemy's attention. These units silently ascended the steep slopes, moving like shadows across the rocky expanse. At the critical moment, as the enemy's defenses were thrown into disarray by the feigned attack, Cleopatra's infiltrators struck at the heart of the coalition's command structure. The ensuing confusion allowed Tigranes' forces to encircle and subdue the opposition with minimal bloodshed. This brilliant maneuver, a blend of audacity and careful planning, not only secured the vital pass but also sent a resounding message to the neighboring states. The Armenian Empire was a force that employed every weapon at its disposal, not only swords and shields but also the power of strategy and innovation. The success of this campaign reinforced Cleopatra's reputation as a master of military strategy. In the months that followed, she continued to refine her methods, drawing upon a wide range of influences. She studied the treatises of great strategists such as Xenophon and, through the oral traditions preserved in the courts of Pontus, absorbed lessons from the campaigns of past monarchs. These diverse sources of knowledge coalesced in her mind, forming a unique philosophy of warfare that was as flexible as it was formidable. Her approach was characterized by an uncanny ability to anticipate the moves of her adversaries, an unyielding commitment to adaptability, and a deep understanding that victory in war was inseparable from the maintenance of moral and intellectual discipline within one's own ranks. In one particularly harrowing episode, the empire faced an assault from a coalition that sought to exploit the winter months, a time when many armies faltered under the crushing weight of cold and exhaustion. The enemy, aware of the region's merciless winter, had organized a surprise offensive designed to catch the Armenian forces off guard during their most vulnerable season. It was in this crisis that Cleopatra's counsel became even more critical. Recognizing that the harsh conditions could either be a curse or a tool, she recommended a radical adjustment in tactics. Rather than succumbing to the expectation of a frozen stalemate, she advised that the army should adopt a fluid, mobile strategy that took full advantage of the winter landscape. She proposed that troops be trained in winter warfare, emphasizing the importance of maintaining mobility in deep snow and low temperatures. "The cold," she explained during an urgent council meeting, "can freeze the hearts of men who are unprepared. But for those who learn to harness its power, it becomes an ally, forcing our enemies to fight on unfamiliar ground." Under her guidance, specialized units were formed and equipped with gear designed for the brutal conditions. These soldiers, hardened by rigorous training and inspired by Cleopatra's unwavering resolve, became adept at using the winter terrain to launch swift, surgical strikes against enemy positions. Their success not only repelled the winter offensive but also demonstrated that the empire's strength lay in its capacity to adapt to even the most adverse circumstances. Beyond the battlefield, Cleopatra's influence extended to the logistical underpinnings of military operations. She understood that an army's effectiveness was determined not only by the valor of its soldiers but also by the robustness of its supply lines, the quality of its communication, and the efficiency of its command structure. In a series of sweeping reforms, she restructured the military's logistics, ensuring that food, weapons, and medical supplies were distributed with military precision across the sprawling empire. Her reforms included the establishment of dedicated supply depots, the creation of rapid response units tasked with repairing roads and bridges, and the introduction of standardized communication protocols that allowed for swift coordination between disparate units. These innovations, though perhaps less glamorous than heroic charges and daring infiltrations, were no less critical to the success of the campaigns. In the cold light of strategic necessity, Cleopatra's attention to detail in the realm of logistics proved that true military genius lay in the mastery of every aspect of warfare, from the grandeur of battlefield maneuvers to the minutiae of supply management. Perhaps the most enduring element of Cleopatra's counsel in warfare was her insistence on the integration of intellect and compassion in the art of command. She was well aware that the most successful campaigns were not those that relied solely on fear and brute strength, but those that earned the loyalty and respect of both soldiers and civilians alike. To this end, she championed a leadership style that combined rigorous discipline with a genuine concern for the welfare of the troops. She instituted regular sessions in which commanders were encouraged to discuss not only the tactical challenges they faced, but also the moral dilemmas inherent in the conduct of war. In these meetings, held in the quiet recesses of the war room, voices that might otherwise have been stifled by the din of conflict were given space to express doubts, share experiences, and propose innovative solutions. This open dialogue fostered a culture of mutual respect and intellectual vibrancy, ensuring that decisions were made not in isolation but with the collective wisdom of a united command structure. One vivid illustration of this approach occurred during a prolonged siege of a fortified city that was of strategic importance to the empire. The enemy, aware of the symbolic and tactical value of the stronghold, had fortified it with a series of elaborate defenses and was using it as a base from which to launch counterattacks. The siege had dragged on for weeks, and the morale of Tigranes' troops was beginning to wane under the strain of constant hardship. Recognizing the peril of a demoralized army, Cleopatra convened a special assembly of senior commanders, engineers, and even representatives of the common soldiers. In a series of marathon discussions that stretched deep into the night, she outlined a plan that involved not only a renewed assault on the city's defenses, but also a series of measures to boost the morale of the besieging forces. The plan called for the construction of specialized siege engines, the diversion of water supplies to weaken the enemy's defenses, and, crucially, a coordinated effort to communicate with the civilian inhabitants of the besieged city in a bid to negotiate a peaceful surrender. Through her persuasive arguments and compassionate appeal to the shared values of honor and duty, she managed to rally the commanders and restore the fighting spirit of the army. The siege was eventually brought to a successful conclusion, with the city surrendering not solely out of fear of further bloodshed, but also in recognition of the wisdom and humanity embodied by its conquerors. In the aftermath of these victories, as the spoils of war were gathered and the maps of the empire were redrawn, Cleopatra's role as counselor in warfare became enshrined in the annals of history. Her contributions went far beyond the immediate tactical successes. They laid the groundwork for a military tradition that prized innovation, adaptability, and ethical leadership. Her strategies, meticulously recorded and passed down through generations of military historians, served as a guide for commanders who found themselves grappling with the complexities of modern warfare. The lessons she imparted about the necessity of integrating strategic foresight with a deep understanding of human nature, about the value of humility in the face of both victory and defeat, continued to influence the art of war long after the battles of her day had become legends. In quiet moments of reflection, Tigranes would often acknowledge that his own success on the battlefield was inextricably linked to Cleopatra's sage counsel. Though history might remember him as a warrior king, those who knew him well understood that his greatest strength lay in his ability to listen to the counsel of a partner whose intellect and foresight transformed the conduct of warfare. Together, they had redefined the parameters of military strategy, proving that the convergence of art, intellect, and martial valor could forge a path to glory that was as enduring as it was brilliant. The legacy of Cleopatra's counsel in warfare was not confined to the immediate triumphs of her era. It was reflected in the enduring peace that followed many of the campaigns, in the stability of the empire that was secured through not only conquests but also the careful cultivation of alliances and the humane treatment of defeated foes. In an age when the harsh realities of war often led to unbridled cruelty and endless cycles of retribution, her insistence on measured, thoughtful engagement helped to temper the passions of the time. Her strategies emphasized that the true objective of war was not the unmitigated destruction of one's enemies, but the creation of conditions that would allow for a lasting peace, a peace built on respect, mutual understanding, and the recognition of shared humanity. As the empire continued to grow, the chronicles of Cleopatra's military wisdom became a source of inspiration for future leaders. In the training grounds of Armenia, young cadets studied her tactical treatises alongside the classic works of antiquity. In the strategic academies that sprang up in the newly acquired territories, her methods were dissected, debated, and refined by scholars who recognized that the challenges of warfare were as much about psychological resilience as they were about physical might. Her life's work in the realm of military strategy came to symbolize an era in which the battlefield was not merely a stage for heroic exploits, but a complex arena where the interplay of intellect, emotion, and circumstance determined the fate of nations. The narrative of Cleopatra's counsel in warfare is thus a rich tapestry woven from the threads of audacity, innovation, and unwavering dedication to the principles of enlightened leadership. It is a story that spans countless battles and quiet moments of reflection, a chronicle of how one woman's vision redefined the art of war for an empire that sought not only to conquer lands but also to uplift the spirit of its people. Through every campaign, from the icy passes of winter to the rugged cliffs of mountainous borders, her influence was felt in the careful planning, the adaptive tactics, and the enduring commitment to fairness and honor that characterized the military traditions of the Armenian state. In the end, the Council of Cleopatra of Pontus in matters of warfare stands as one of the crowning achievements of her legacy, a legacy that, even centuries later, continues to inspire those who study the art and science of conflict. Her strategies, which melded the timeless wisdom of ancient traditions with the practical necessities of her era, remain a testament to the power of the human mind to overcome even the most formidable challenges. For in the volatile interplay of strategy and circumstance, in the delicate balance between offense and defense, Cleopatra's voice continues to echo, a reminder that true victory is achieved not only through the might of arms, but through the union of heart, mind, and the indomitable will to forge a future built on both strength and compassion. Thus, as the chronicles of the Armenian Empire are read and revered by generations that followed, the period of strategic brilliance and courageous counsel during times of warfare endures as a beacon of what is possible when intellect and valor are united. The legacy of Cleopatra's military strategies and campaigns, etched in the annals of history in painstaking detail and celebrated in the whispered legends of battlefields long past, remains a timeless narrative, one that teaches that the art of war, when tempered with wisdom and a commitment to the greater good, can lay the foundation for an empire that endures through the ages. In the wake of numerous military victories and sweeping cultural reforms, the Armenian Empire began to take on a character that was as much defined by enlightened governance as it was by martial might. At the center of this transformation was the profound influence of Cleopatra of Pontus on Tigranes' leadership and the policies he enacted. Her wisdom, drawn from a synthesis of Hellenistic philosophy, Pontic tradition, and indigenous Armenian values, gradually reshaped not only the tactical decisions made on the battlefield but also the very fabric of statecraft. Tigranes, already renowned for his formidable command and unwavering ambition, evolved into a ruler whose policies reflected a unique balance of military rigor and compassionate governance, a metamorphosis that would define the legacy of his reign for generations to come. From the earliest days of their union, Cleopatra's counsel proved invaluable in guiding Tigranes' decision-making processes. In the quiet hours of dawn, when the palace corridors were hushed and the responsibilities of leadership weighed heavily on his shoulders. Tigranes would often seek out Cleopatra's perspective on matters ranging from administrative reforms to the delicate art of diplomacy. Her insights were not merely academic. They were practical strategies rooted in a deep understanding of human nature and the complexities of power. She urged him to consider not only the immediate tactical advantages of his decisions, but also the long-term implications for his people and the stability of his expanding empire. One of the most visible areas of influence was in the realm of legal and administrative reform. Cleopatra argued that for an empire to endure, its governance structures needed to be as adaptable and resilient as its military strategies. Under her guidance, Tigranes initiated a series of reforms that overhauled the administrative apparatus of the state. Provincial governors were selected not solely on the basis of their noble birth or military exploits, but for their proven competence and loyalty to the ideals of the state. Legal codes were revised to ensure that justice was tempered by mercy, reflecting a philosophy that recognized the humanity of both the ruler and the ruled. In effect, the reforms laid the groundwork for a system of governance that sought to unite a diverse populace under a single banner of shared law and order, a system where the rights of citizens were increasingly acknowledged even amid the tumult of expansion. Cleopatra's influence was also keenly felt in Tigranes' approach to foreign policy. In a region where alliances shifted as swiftly as the desert winds, maintaining a stable network of diplomatic relations was crucial. Rather than pursuing endless conquests driven by sheer ambition, Tigranes began to view diplomacy as a complementary tool to military might. Drawing on Cleopatra's extensive knowledge of Hellenistic diplomatic traditions and her own experiences as a negotiator, he embarked on a policy of measured engagement with neighboring states. Treaties were negotiated that not only secured temporary truces but also established enduring alliances based on mutual respect and shared interests. Through these diplomatic endeavors, Tigranes managed to stabilize volatile borders and foster economic and cultural exchanges that enriched the empire as a whole. In the grand halls of the royal court, where decisions of state were debated with a fervor reminiscent of ancient academies, Cleopatra's presence ensured that the voices of philosophers, poets, and legal scholars were given as much weight as those of military strategists. Her insistence on a well-rounded approach to governance transformed the court into an intellectual haven, a place where ideas were exchanged freely and policies were forged through rigorous debate. This transformation had a cascading effect on the entire state apparatus. The integration of cultural and intellectual pursuits into the policymaking process fostered a climate of innovation and progress, leading to advances in fields as varied as engineering, agriculture, and education. In a sense, the empire itself became a living laboratory for the experiment of enlightened governance, with Tigranes' policies reflecting a fusion of pragmatism and idealism that was as groundbreaking as it was effective. The influence of Cleopatra on Tigranes' leadership was perhaps most evident in the way he conducted himself as a ruler. Gone were the days when kings ruled solely by decree and fear. Under the combined guidance of Tigranes and Cleopatra, leadership became an art form, characterized by a measured balance of strength and empathy. Tigranes began to hold regular assemblies where grievances could be aired, and policy decisions were discussed openly with representatives from across the empire. These assemblies, though still dominated by the aristocracy, gradually became more inclusive, giving voice to the common citizen in matters of state. It was a revolutionary shift, a move away from the absolute rule of old toward a more participatory form of governance that recognized the value of every individual's contribution to the common good. In matters of cultural policy, Cleopatra's impact was equally profound, recognizing that the strength of an empire lay not only in its armies but also in the spirit of its people. She advocated for the promotion of the arts, education, and public works. Tigranes responded by commissioning grand architectural projects that were as much about inspiring civic pride as they were about demonstrating imperial power. The construction of libraries, theaters, and public forums became a priority, ensuring that the intellectual and cultural wealth of the empire was preserved and disseminated. These public works were more than monuments to the glory of Tigranes' reign. They were living embodiments of the enlightened policies that had been shaped by Cleopatra's vision, a vision that saw the arts and sciences as indispensable to the progress and unity of the state. The economic policies of the empire also underwent a significant transformation during this period. Cleopatra, ever mindful of the interconnectedness of culture, politics, and economics, advised Tigranes to adopt strategies that promoted both trade and internal prosperity. New trade routes were established, linking the Armenian heartland with distant markets along the Silk Road and the Mediterranean. Tariffs were reformed, and a standardized currency was introduced to facilitate commerce across the diverse regions of the empire. These economic reforms not only boosted the state's revenues, but also helped to integrate a mosaic of peoples into a cohesive economic unit. As merchants and artisans found new opportunities to thrive, the empire's cities blossomed into centers of commerce and innovation, a testament to a leadership that understood that economic strength was as vital as military power. Perhaps one of the most enduring legacies of Cleopatra's influence on Tigranes' leadership was the manner in which it redefined the relationship between the ruler and his subjects. In an era when power was often wielded with an iron fist, Tigranes began to model his rule on principles of benevolence and shared responsibility. Inspired by Cleopatra's compassionate counsel, he instituted policies that sought to alleviate the hardships faced by the lower classes. Land reforms were implemented to reduce the concentration of wealth among the nobility, and public granaries were established to ensure that famine did not decimate the populace during times of drought or war. These policies, while revolutionary in their own right, were a direct reflection of a leadership style that recognized that the true measure of a ruler's greatness lay in his ability to uplift his people, rather than simply to command their obedience. The transformation in Tigranes' leadership was not without its challenges. There were those within the court who viewed the new policies with suspicion, fearing that the erosion of traditional hierarchies would lead to instability. However, as the tangible benefits of these reforms began to materialize, a more robust economy, a flourishing cultural scene, and increased loyalty among the people, the initial skepticism gave way to cautious optimism. Over time, even the most ardent traditionalists came to recognize that the empire was becoming stronger not in spite of its reforms, but because of them. Tigranes' ability to blend the martial virtues of his predecessors with a newfound commitment to enlightened governance served as a powerful model for future rulers, both within Armenia and in neighboring states that witnessed the success of his policies. The personal evolution of Tigranes as a leader was mirrored in the daily rituals and ceremonies of the court. Gone were the days of ostentatious displays of power that emphasized conquest and dominance. Instead, state functions became occasions for the celebration of civic unity, intellectual achievement, and the shared cultural heritage of a diverse people. Tigranes himself took on a more approachable demeanor in public, often seen engaging in informal discussions with scholars, artisans, and even commoners. This accessibility was a deliberate departure from the authoritarian norms of earlier times, a transformation inspired by Cleopatra's belief that a ruler must be intimately connected to his people if he is to govern wisely. In these interactions, Tigranes' leadership took on a more human dimension, a blend of strength and sensitivity that endeared him to his subjects and set a new standard for the conduct of royalty. Over the years, as the policies shaped by this partnership began to yield remarkable dividends, the legacy of Cleopatra's influence on Tigranes' leadership became the subject of much admiration among contemporaries and later chroniclers. Historians would note that Tigranes' reign, while marked by bold military campaigns and territorial expansion, was equally defined by the innovative policies that ensured the long-term stability and prosperity of the empire. His willingness to embrace reforms that promoted social justice, economic integration, and cultural enrichment was a radical departure from the conventional paradigms of power. In many respects, Tigranes emerged as a visionary leader whose policies laid the groundwork for a state that could weather the turbulent currents of history. As the empire grew and its borders extended into lands rich with diverse traditions and resources, the influence of Cleopatra's council became even more critical. Tigranes' policies began to reflect a sophisticated understanding of governance that transcended the immediate imperatives of conquest. The empire was no longer merely a collection of territories secured by force. It was a complex, interconnected polity in which the rule of law, the promotion of culture, and the welfare of the citizenry were integral to its identity. The administrative reforms initiated during this period paved the way for a bureaucracy that could manage the challenges of a vast and multifaceted empire, ensuring that the ideals of justice and equity were upheld even in the farthest reaches of Tigranes' dominion. In the later years of his reign, Tigranes would often reflect on the journey that had brought him to this point, a journey that was as much about personal growth as it was about military or political success. In the quiet solitude of his private chambers, he would pore over records of past decisions and correspondences with Cleopatra, marveling at how the integration of her council had transformed his approach to leadership. He recognized that his greatest victories were not measured solely in the expansion of territory or the subjugation of foes, but in the harmonious functioning of a state that had learned to value wisdom over mere force, and compassion over unyielding authority. The enduring impact of these transformative policies extended well beyond the lifetime of Tigranes. His successors inherited an administrative framework and a cultural legacy that bore the unmistakable imprint of his enlightened rule, a legacy that had its roots in the partnership with Cleopatra of Pontus. Her influence had not only reshaped the leadership of one man, but had also set a precedent for a mode of governance that prized consultation, cultural integration, and the welfare of the populace. This new paradigm of leadership, forged in the crucible of a changing world, became a touchstone for future rulers who sought to emulate the balanced approach that had brought unprecedented prosperity and stability to the Armenian Empire. In the annals of history, the period of Tigranes' reign is often remembered for its dazzling military campaigns and expansive conquests. Yet, beneath the surface of these martial exploits lay a subtler revolution, a transformation in leadership and statecraft that would endure for centuries. The influence of Cleopatra on Tigranes' policies created a legacy in which power was not an end in itself, but a means to cultivate a society characterized by justice, cultural vibrancy, and economic dynamism. Her counsel helped Tigranes to understand that the strength of an empire was inextricably linked to the well-being of its people, and that lasting success required a harmonious blend of military excellence, intellectual achievement, and moral responsibility. Thus, the story of Tigranes' transformation, shaped and refined by the unwavering guidance of Cleopatra of Pontus, stands as a testament to the profound impact that visionary counsel can have on the course of history. In reimagining the role of leadership, Tigranes not only forged an empire of great power, but also created a legacy of enlightened governance that would inspire future generations to seek a balance between might and mercy. His reign became a living illustration of how the union of strength and wisdom can transform the destiny of a people, ensuring that the light of progress endures even in the face of the greatest challenges. In reflecting on this transformative period, one cannot help but marvel at the remarkable evolution of Tigranes' leadership, a journey from a warrior king driven solely by ambition to a statesman whose policies resonated with the ideals of justice, unity, and cultural richness. It is a legacy that continues to speak to the modern world, offering timeless lessons on the importance of integrating ethical governance with the demands of power. Cleopatra of Pontus, through her steadfast counsel and visionary ideas, had left an indelible mark on the heart of an empire, a mark that transformed the very notion of what it means to lead. In the midst of an empire built on the confluence of military might and enlightened governance, a quieter yet no less profound chapter of history unfolded within the walls of the royal household. As Tigranes the Great and Cleopatra of Pontus steered the destiny of their vast dominion, a new legacy was being forged, one that would carry the hopes, values, and ambitions of an entire people into the future. This was the era of motherhood and the nurturing of heirs, when Cleopatra, with all the wisdom and compassion that had guided her in matters of state and war, assumed the equally momentous role of shaping the next generation. Her influence on her children, and by extension on the future leaders of the Armenian Empire, would prove to be as transformative as any military campaign or diplomatic negotiation. From the earliest days of their union, Cleopatra recognized that the future of the empire was intricately tied to the education and upbringing of the royal offspring. In a world where the fate of nations was determined by the decisions of those in power, she saw herself as both mentor and guardian, a beacon of wisdom whose duty was to imbue her children with the knowledge, ethics, and vision necessary to uphold the ideals that had come to define the reign of Tigranes and herself. The lessons of history, the art of diplomacy, the rigors of military strategy, and the timeless beauty of culture were all woven into the fabric of her daily teachings. In the quiet morning light of the palace, while the empire outside bustled with the activity of commerce, art, and military exercises, Cleopatra would often be found in the private gardens of the royal residence. Here, amidst the blooming roses and stately cypress trees, she would sit with her children, each a living promise of a better tomorrow, and share with them the stories of ancient heroes and wise rulers. With a voice both gentle and firm, she recounted the sagas of past empires, drawing lessons from their triumphs and follies alike. She spoke of the delicate balance between power and compassion, of how strength was best measured by the ability to protect and uplift one's people rather than by mere conquest. In these moments, the seeds of leadership were sown, nurtured by the rich soil of tradition and the promise of progress. Cleopatra's approach to motherhood was informed by her own experiences in the often harsh and unpredictable world of politics. She understood that the lives of rulers were not marked solely by luxury or leisure, but by duty, sacrifice, and the constant challenge of making decisions that affected countless lives. With this in mind, she designed an education for her children that was as rigorous as it was nurturing. Tutors were selected from among the most learned scholars of the day, philosophers who had mastered the art of rhetoric, mathematicians who could decipher the mysteries of the cosmos, and strategists well-versed in the art of war. Yet, beyond the lessons of letters and numbers, Cleopatra ensured that her children also learned the value of empathy, the importance of justice, and the power of cultural unity. The royal nursery was transformed into a microcosm of the empire itself, a space where the languages, customs, and traditions of diverse peoples converged. In this sanctuary, the young heirs learned to appreciate not only the legacy of their Armenian heritage, but also the rich tapestry of influences that had come to define the realm under Tigranes' reign. The arts, which Cleopatra so passionately championed, played a central role in their education. Poetry, music, and sculpture were not seen as mere indulgences but as essential expressions of the human spirit, an inheritance that was to be cherished and passed on to future generations. Through the cadence of a well-rehearsed verse or the intricate brushstrokes of a masterful painting, the children learned that beauty and truth were inextricably linked to the identity of the empire. As the heirs grew older, the lessons of their early childhood matured into a profound understanding of governance and responsibility. Cleopatra took great care in instilling in them the principles of moderation and foresight. She often held long, intimate discussions in the quiet study of the palace, where the flicker of candlelight cast dancing shadows on ancient texts and maps that charted the history of their people. In these sessions, she would ask probing questions, challenging them to consider the consequences of decisions both small and great, and urging them to weigh the scales of justice with both heart and mind. Her approach was never didactic. Instead, it was a dialogue, a meeting of minds across generations that honored the wisdom of the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. For Cleopatra, motherhood was not merely a biological role. It was a calling that encompassed the duty of ensuring that the empire's values would endure beyond her own lifetime. Her influence was particularly evident in the way she prepared her children to interact with the myriad cultures that populated the expanding empire. In a world where diversity was both a strength and a challenge, she taught them the art of diplomacy from an early age. They learned to greet foreign envoys with warmth and respect, to listen attentively to the concerns of local leaders, and to see in every person the potential for unity rather than division. These lessons in diplomacy were practical as well as philosophical. For Cleopatra knew that the future of the empire depended on forging alliances based not on coercion but on mutual understanding and shared destiny. The weight of responsibility was not lost on the young heirs. They observed closely the manner in which their mother balanced her public and private lives, the grace with which she navigated the intricacies of court politics, the compassion she displayed in the corridors of power, and the unwavering commitment to justice that defined every decision she made. In times of public celebration, when the empire rejoiced in its victories and cultural achievements, Cleopatra's children were brought into the heart of the festivities. They witnessed firsthand the generosity of a ruler who understood that the strength of the state lay in its people. They saw how art and architecture were used to tell the story of their heritage, and how public works served as symbols of the collective will of the nation. Yet, the path of the heirs was not one paved solely with light and triumph. There were moments of hardship, challenges that tested their resolve and forced them to confront the darker aspects of power. In the midst of political intrigue and occasional threats to the stability of the empire, Cleopatra's nurturing presence became a constant source of solace and guidance. When rival factions within the court sowed seeds of discord, or when the harsh realities of military conflict left scars upon the land, her children found in her a steadfast beacon of hope. She reminded them that adversity was not a signal of weakness, but an opportunity to forge resilience and to learn the true meaning of leadership. It was in these moments of crisis that the lessons of her gentle counsel were most keenly felt, lessons that taught them to lead not with arrogance or cruelty, but with the quiet strength that comes from understanding the common plight of one's people. As the years passed and the heirs matured into young adults, Cleopatra's influence extended into the realms of practical governance. She accompanied them on official visits to distant provinces, where they observed the day-to-day challenges faced by their subjects. Together, they toured bustling marketplaces, met with local leaders, and listened to the concerns of farmers and artisans. These excursions were not simply ceremonial, they were integral to the education of future rulers. In the vibrant tapestry of the empire's diverse communities, the heirs learned that effective leadership required a deep empathy for the struggles of everyday life and an unwavering commitment to justice. They observed how their mother handled conflicts with a blend of firmness and mercy, and they internalized the notion that true power was measured by the ability to heal divisions rather than deepen them. In private, the lessons of the heart were equally profound. Cleopatra often regaled her children with personal anecdotes, stories of her own youth, of challenges faced and overcome, and of the enduring bonds of family and friendship that had sustained her through times of both triumph and sorrow. These intimate conversations revealed a side of leadership that was seldom captured in grand historical narratives, a side marked by vulnerability, introspection, and the simple joys of shared laughter. Her stories spoke of a world where personal sacrifice and the pursuit of the common good went hand in hand, where the ties of kinship were as crucial to the fabric of the state as were the decrees issued in the halls of power. Through her words, the heirs came to understand that the true measure of success was not the accumulation of wealth or the expansion of territory, but the legacy of kindness, wisdom, and integrity that one left behind. As Cleopatra's children began to assume more prominent roles within the empire, their mother continued to be their most trusted advisor and confidant. They debated policy with her, sought her counsel in moments of doubt, and in turn, she encouraged them to chart their own courses while remaining ever mindful of the lessons of the past. In the quiet solitude of twilight, when the day's responsibilities had faded into a reflective calm, they would gather around her and pore over scrolls and maps that chronicled the history of their people. It was in these sacred moments of study that the heirs not only absorbed the practical knowledge necessary for governance, but also embraced the deeper philosophical underpinnings of leadership, a recognition that the art of ruling was as much about nurturing the soul of the nation as it was about wielding authority. The passage of time wove its inevitable tapestry, and soon the heirs found themselves on the threshold of full responsibility. They were prepared not only by formal education and the rigors of statecraft, but by the enduring example of a mother who had given everything for the sake of her people. as the empire expanded and the challenges of governance grew ever more complex. The lessons imparted by Cleopatra became the bedrock upon which the next generation built their own legacies. They carried forward her vision of a state that harmonized strength with compassion, innovation with tradition, and authority with humility in the grand rituals of succession and state ceremonies. The influence of Cleopatra was evident in every carefully chosen word and every measured gesture. Her children, now recognized as the rightful heirs of an empire that had been transformed by the union of diverse cultures and ideas, emerged as leaders in their own right. They took up the mantle of governance with a deep sense of purpose, a purpose that was rooted in the understanding that the future of their people depended on the continued fusion of military discipline, diplomatic engagement, and a boundless commitment to the arts and sciences. Their policies, shaped by the dual legacies of Tigranes and Cleopatra, were characterized by an enduring belief in the power of education, the importance of public welfare, and the necessity of maintaining open channels of dialogue between the rulers and the ruled. The story of motherhood and the heirs of an empire is, in many ways, a story of renewal and continuity. It is a narrative that transcends the individual lives of rulers and extends into the collective memory of a nation. Cleopatra's legacy as a mother was not confined to the nurturing of her own children. It resonated throughout the empire in the form of the institutions she helped to build, the cultural values she championed, and the enduring spirit of unity that came to define the state. Her influence was felt in the grand libraries that housed the knowledge of countless generations, in the public forums where citizens debated the future of their society, and in the hearts of all who believed that the true strength of an empire lay in the wisdom of its leaders and the compassion they extended to their people. In the twilight of her life, as Cleopatra surveyed the realm she had helped to shape, she took solace in the knowledge that the seeds of her efforts had blossomed into a legacy that would endure long after her time. The heirs she had nurtured carried with them not only the blood of a noble lineage but also the indelible imprint of a mother's love, a love that had transcended the ordinary and embraced the extraordinary challenge of building an empire that celebrated the best of humanity. In the gentle cadence of their voices, in the measured wisdom of their decisions, and in the quiet dignity with which they assumed their roles, one could discern the enduring echo of Cleopatra's guiding presence. Thus, the chapter of motherhood and the heirs of an empire stands as one of the most intimate and transformative periods in the history of Tigranes' reign. It is a testament to the power of love, education, and visionary guidance, a reminder that the future is not built solely on the conquests of armies or the edicts of kings, but on the nurturing of minds and hearts that are capable of carrying forward the legacy of a people. Cleopatra of Pontus, through her tireless devotion as a mother and mentor, ensured that the ideals of justice, unity, and cultural brilliance would live on in every decision made by the next generation of leaders. In the end, as the heirs of the empire stepped forward to write their own chapters in the annals of history, they did so imbued with the spirit of a mother who had given them not only life but the tools to shape it with wisdom and integrity. Their journey was a continuation of a legacy that began with a powerful union and blossomed into an empire defined by the harmonious blend of strength and compassion, a legacy that would inspire countless generations to come. In the waning light of the early morning, as the first rays of the sun illuminated the gleaming marble facades of the capital city, the Armenian Empire stood at the pinnacle of its power, a radiant testament to centuries of ambition, conquest, culture, and enlightened governance. At this zenith, the empire was not merely a sprawling collection of territories on a map, but a living, breathing organism, a vibrant mosaic of peoples, languages, and traditions united under a single, resonant vision, the fruits of decades of painstaking work, strategic military campaigns, cultural renaissance, and innovative policies were now visible in every aspect of state life. And the empire's influence reached from the rugged mountains in the east to the sparkling Mediterranean coasts in the west. This period of prosperity and cultural efflorescence was marked by an unparalleled synthesis of art, literature, science, and political thought, Grand architectural projects and public works had transformed the cities into centers of artistic expression and civic pride. Statues of heroic figures and visionary leaders, many of whom had contributed to the rise of the empire, adorned public squares and temple facades, their marble surfaces catching the light in a dance of glory and remembrance. The palace itself, a marvel of engineering and aesthetic splendor, served as a living repository of the empire's history, where every hall, courtyard, and chamber told a story of perseverance and unity. At the heart of this luminous era was the legacy of Tigranes the Great and the enduring influence of Cleopatra of Pontus, a partnership whose reverberations could be seen in every facet of the state. The reforms they had initiated, the alliances they had forged, and the cultural programs they had nurtured had coalesced into a golden age for Armenia. The empire now boasted an administrative structure that was both efficient and responsive, balancing the imperatives of military strength with the values of justice, education, and artistic innovation. Scholars, poets, architects, and engineers labored side by side with seasoned generals and pragmatic governors, all contributing to an ever-expanding repository of human achievement that defied the confines of any single discipline. In the bustling urban centers, the marketplace was alive with the vibrant chatter of merchants and the mingling scents of spices, perfumes, and rare treasures imported from far-off lands. Here, goods were traded not only for profit but also as symbols of the rich cultural interplay that defined the empire. Exotic textiles and intricately crafted jewelry spoke of a society that appreciated beauty and refinement, while sturdy tools and agricultural implements testified to a robust economy capable of supporting both urban splendor and rural sustenance. The economic prosperity of the era was underpinned by innovations in trade and infrastructure. Newly constructed roads, bridges, and ports ensured that the empire was interconnected, with ideas and commodities flowing freely along well-maintained trade routes. Education and intellectual inquiry had reached unprecedented heights. The great libraries of Armenia, established under the patronage of Cleopatra and expanded by subsequent rulers, contained scrolls and manuscripts from every corner of the known world. In these halls of learning, scholars debated philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and the natural sciences with a fervor that rivaled the most advanced centers of the ancient world. Public lectures, debates, and symposiums were held regularly, and students from across the empire flocked to the capital to partake in this intellectual ferment. The arts, too, flourished under an atmosphere of creative freedom. Painters and sculptors found inspiration in the stories of past heroes and the beauty of the natural landscape, while musicians and poets wove the sounds and rhythms of daily life into compositions that resonated with the collective soul of the nation. The zenith of the empire was not achieved without its challenges. In the shadow of triumph, there remained the ever-present threat of internal discord and external rivalry. Yet even in moments of tension, the lessons of the past provided a steadying influence. The wisdom inherited from the eras of Tigranes and Cleopatra guided the empire through periods of crisis, ensuring that disputes were resolved not by the indiscriminate application of force but by dialogue, compromise, and the judicious use of state power. The administrative reforms that had been enacted during earlier phases of expansion now bore fruit in the form of a resilient bureaucracy capable of mediating conflicts and adapting to changing circumstances. Local assemblies and councils provided forums where grievances could be aired, and policies were debated openly, reflecting an evolving understanding that the strength of the state was intimately bound to the well-being of its citizens. The military, too, had undergone a profound transformation. Once the instrument of conquest and subjugation, the armed forces of the Armenian Empire had evolved into a disciplined, modern institution that balanced readiness with the ideals of honorable conduct. The strategies honed under Cleopatra's guidance, which had enabled Tigranes to secure critical victories with minimal bloodshed, were now complemented by advanced logistical systems and improved training regimens. Soldiers were not only taught the art of warfare but were also inculcated with a sense of civic duty and loyalty to the state. a loyalty that stemmed from the shared pride of a people who had witnessed their empire rise from humble beginnings to a beacon of hope and progress. Amidst this grand tapestry of military might and cultural achievement, the imperial court continued to serve as the epicenter of innovation and governance. The palace, once the private sanctuary of a ruling couple, had expanded to include advisory councils, academies, and public galleries where the achievements of the empire were celebrated. The arts were interwoven with the administration of the state, and state ceremonies were marked by elaborate displays of music, dance, and rhetoric. Emissaries from distant lands, ranging from the sun-dappled realms of North Africa to the bustling trade centers of the East, visited the court, eager to witness firsthand the marvels of Armenian civilization and to forge new bonds of friendship and commerce. At the same time, the religious and philosophical life of the empire thrived in a manner that underscored the profound interconnectedness of the state's diverse cultures. Temples and sanctuaries, dedicated to both indigenous deities and the pantheons of Hellenistic tradition, stood side by side, symbolizing a synthesis of faith that transcended rigid boundaries. Philosophers and theologians engaged in spirited debates about the nature of the divine, the ethics of governance, and the role of destiny in human affairs, forging a spiritual and intellectual legacy that would endure long after the tangible monuments of the era had faded into memory. The resulting religious and cultural pluralism, far from fracturing the state, served to knit together disparate communities under the banner of a shared destiny. A destiny that promised not only material prosperity, but also a transcendent unity of purpose. The zenith of the Armenian Empire was, in many ways, the culmination of a series of deliberate choices made by visionary leaders who had recognized that power could be wielded with both strength and benevolence. Tigranes and Cleopatra had charted a course that defied the conventional wisdom of their time, a course that saw the true measure of a ruler not in the number of foes defeated or territories claimed, but in the ability to inspire loyalty, elevate the human spirit, and forge a society in which justice and beauty went hand in hand. Their legacy was evident in every facet of the empire. In the meticulously designed public spaces that encouraged civic engagement, in the intellectual vibrancy that animated the libraries and academies, and in the harmonious interplay of military, administrative, and cultural institutions that defined the state's character. It was during this period of unrivaled prosperity that the people of Armenia experienced a collective sense of destiny, a belief that they were part of something far greater than themselves, a legacy that had been built over generations of sacrifice, innovation, and unwavering commitment to a common ideal. The arts and sciences were not confined to the realm of the elite, but had become the heritage of every citizen. In village squares and urban centers alike, festivals celebrated the triumphs of the past while heralding the promise of the future. Epic poems recounted the deeds of legendary heroes and the wisdom of sagacious rulers, weaving together a narrative that was as much about cultural identity as it was about political power. These stories, passed down from one generation to the next, reinforced the idea that the empire was not a transient construct of conquest but a living, evolving entity, a beacon of civilization whose light would guide the course of history for centuries to come. The zenith of the Armenian Empire was also marked by a spirit of exploration and curiosity. Ambitious expeditions were launched to chart unknown territories, to establish new trade routes, and to seek out fresh sources of knowledge and inspiration. Scholars and adventurers alike ventured into distant lands, their journeys documented in meticulously crafted chronicles that blended observation with lyrical prose. These expeditions not only expanded the geographic boundaries of the empire, but also enriched its intellectual and cultural tapestry, as ideas and innovations from far-off lands found fertile ground in the minds of Armenian thinkers. The resulting exchange of knowledge contributed to a climate of intellectual openness, a defining characteristic of the zenith, where the boundaries between art, science, and philosophy blurred into a continuum of discovery and enlightenment. Political stability, nurtured by the inclusive reforms and the vibrant civic institutions of the era, provided the foundation upon which the empire's achievements could be sustained. The administrative framework, designed to be as adaptable as it was robust, ensured that even in times of crisis, the state could respond swiftly and effectively. Local leaders were empowered to manage their communities with a degree of autonomy that fostered innovation and accountability, while central oversight maintained the integrity of national policies. This balance between local initiative and centralized coordination created a dynamic equilibrium, a state in which the energies of diverse regions converged to strengthen the whole, ensuring that the empire was not a collection of isolated dominions but a unified entity with a shared destiny. Yet, even as the empire basked in the glow of its accomplishments, the specter of future challenges loomed, a reminder that the zenith, while a moment of triumph, was also a juncture from which the trajectory of history could be forever altered. The leaders of Armenia, mindful of the lessons of the past, did not rest on their laurels. They recognized that the forces of change, be they external pressures or internal dissensions, would continue to test the resilience of the state. To safeguard their achievements, visionary policymakers and cultural custodians worked tirelessly to innovate and adapt. New technologies in agriculture and engineering were developed to enhance productivity and sustain the growing population. Legal reforms were continually refined to ensure fairness and to address emerging social challenges. And diplomatic missions were expanded to build networks of cooperation with neighboring states and distant powers alike. This era of prosperity also fostered an unprecedented flourishing of cultural life. The artistic achievements of the time were a dazzling reflection of a society that had reached its creative apex. Masterpieces of sculpture, painting, and architecture were produced by artists whose works captured the spirit of the age with astonishing clarity and beauty. Public monuments commemorated both mythic ancestors and contemporary heroes, their enduring forms serving as a testament to the empire's belief in the immortality of human achievement. The synthesis of various artistic traditions, from the refined elegance of Hellenistic art to the bold, dynamic forms of indigenous expression, resulted in a visual language that was at once innovative and deeply rooted in history. The legacy of this artistic renaissance was not confined to aesthetic appreciation alone. It served as a unifying force that reinforced the collective identity of the empire, inspiring pride and solidarity among its diverse peoples. In the realm of science and philosophy, the zenith of the empire represented a convergence of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge inquiry. Renowned philosophers, scientists, and mathematicians gathered in the great academies of Armenia to debate the nature of reality, the origins of the cosmos, and the principles governing human society. Their discussions, recorded meticulously in vast libraries and later disseminated across the empire, laid the groundwork for advances that would shape not only the immediate future of Armenia but also contribute to the broader corpus of human knowledge. The integration of empirical observation with philosophical speculation engendered breakthroughs in fields ranging from astronomy to medicine. And the discoveries of this era continued to influence generations of scholars long after the zenith had passed. As the sun set on the days of unrivaled glory, the Armenian Empire at its zenith stood as a living monument to the enduring power of enlightened leadership and cultural synthesis. The legacy of Tigranes, Cleopatra, and the countless individuals who had dedicated their lives to the service of the state was etched into the very soul of the nation, a soul that had learned to celebrate its diversity, to embrace the challenges of the future, and to seek out the beauty in every facet of human endeavor. In the twilight of this golden age, as the empire looked both inward and outward, there was an abiding sense that the zenith was not an end but a foundation, a platform from which new generations would launch fresh initiatives, confront emerging challenges, and build upon the achievements of the past. The great cities, the vibrant cultural institutions, the thriving markets, and the resonant voices of philosophers and poets all bore witness to a moment in time when the Armenian Empire had truly reached its pinnacle, a moment that would be remembered and revered in the annals of history as a time when the human spirit soared, unburdened by the constraints of division and driven by the unquenchable desire for progress and unity. Thus, as the empire basked in the radiant glow of its achievements, the zenith of the Armenian Empire emerged as both an apotheosis of past endeavors and a clarion call to future generations. a reminder that the pursuit of excellence, when guided by the twin pillars of wisdom and compassion, can transform the world. It was a time when every citizen, from the lowliest farmer to the most illustrious scholar, could look to the future with hope and confidence, knowing that the legacy of greatness they had inherited was a living tradition, one that would continue to evolve and inspire long after the echoes of the Golden Age had faded into the mists of time. In every great empire's journey, moments of crisis and turbulence are inescapable, as essential to the unfolding narrative as triumph and renaissance. For the Armenian Empire, reaching the zenith of its power was not the end of its trials, but rather the prelude to an era marked by both internal challenges and external threats. In this period, the once unified state found itself tested by forces that sought to undermine its stability and disrupt the delicate balance between might and wisdom that its founders had so carefully cultivated. Yet, amid these turbulent times, the resilience of the empire shone through, a testament to the enduring spirit of its people and the unyielding vision of leaders who refused to surrender to despair. The first signs of crisis appeared as subtle ripples along the empire's expansive borders. Whispers of discontent began to circulate among distant provinces, where local customs and grievances sometimes clashed with the centralized administrative policies forged in the palace of the capital. As trade routes and cultural exchange had once served to knit the fabric of the empire closer together, now they revealed fissures, minor disputes over resources, divergent interpretations of law, and the restless ambitions of provincial governors eager to assert their autonomy. These early tremors in the foundation of the state required careful attention. High-ranking officials convened in emergency assemblies to discuss reform, while local leaders sent envoys bearing pleas for greater regional representation. Even as these challenges threatened to fracture unity, the wise counselors of the court recalled the teachings of Tigranes and the nurturing spirit of Cleopatra, advocating for dialogue and compromise as the only means of averting chaos. The turbulent currents of discontent were compounded by external pressures. Rival states, ever alert to the shifting dynamics of power, began to exploit the empire's vulnerabilities. Ambitious neighbors launched covert campaigns of subversion and propaganda, seeking to foment rebellion among the disenfranchised and to erode the confidence of the Armenian populace in their centralized leadership. In border regions, marauding bands, sometimes composed of mercenaries, other times of displaced peoples, exploited the uncertainty to harass trade caravans and to seize strategic outposts. These incursions, though not initially catastrophic, accumulated to form a persistent challenge that the empire could no longer ignore. The military, which had once been a symbol of unassailable strength and strategic brilliance, now faced the daunting task of policing an ever-widening frontier while simultaneously guarding against internal dissent. Within the royal court, a palpable sense of urgency began to permeate the atmosphere. The revered halls that had once echoed with the harmonious debates of scholars and the visionary proclamations of statesmen now buzzed with a new intensity, a convergence of anxiety and resolve. Advisors, generals, and bureaucrats gathered in hastily convened councils, poring over maps and intelligence reports to understand the multifaceted nature of the crisis. It was in these moments of high tension that the lessons of resilience, which had been passed down from the days of Cleopatra's benevolent counsel, came to the fore. Leaders reminded one another that every challenge, no matter how dire, carried the seeds of renewal, that in the crucible of adversity, the character of a nation was tested and, if met with courage and ingenuity, ultimately strengthened. One of the most acute challenges emerged in the form of a prolonged siege on a key border fortress, an outpost that had long served as a linchpin in the empire's defensive network. This fortress, perched atop a rugged hill overlooking a vital trade route, became the target of a coalition of rebellious provincial forces and opportunistic external aggressors. For weeks, the stronghold was encircled by enemy forces whose morale and determination were bolstered by the promise of liberating local populations from the centralized authority that many had come to view as remote and unresponsive. The prolonged siege sapped the strength of the garrison stationed within the fortress and placed an enormous strain on the empire's military resources, already stretched thin by the need to address disturbances on multiple fronts. In response to this dire situation, the emperor, advised by a cadre of seasoned generals and wise counselors steeped in the traditions of both military strategy and compassionate governance, devised a daring plan to relieve the besieged fortress. The strategy, a masterful blend of conventional tactics and innovative maneuvers, involved a coordinated counteroffensive that was to be launched from multiple directions. Elite units, chosen for their adaptability and courage in the face of adversity, were dispatched on a covert operation designed to cut off the enemy's supply lines and to create a diversion that would force the besieging forces to divert their attention. At the same time, diplomatic envoys were sent to the leaders of the rebellious factions, seeking to negotiate temporary truces that might allow for the safe passage of reinforcements. The operation, fraught with peril at every turn, demanded not only the highest levels of tactical expertise but also a deep reservoir of emotional fortitude. In the pre-dawn hours, as a cloak of darkness provided cover for the insurgent forces' maneuvers, the sound of battle began to echo across the valley. In a carefully orchestrated flurry of activity, units emerged from hidden positions to strike at critical junctures in the enemy's encirclement. The clash was fierce and chaotic. The roar of weapons, the cries of the wounded, and the resolute shouts of soldiers blended into a cacophony that spoke to the raw reality of warfare. Yet, amid this maelstrom of conflict, the tactical plan unfolded with a precision that reflected the unwavering discipline instilled in every soldier by the Empire's enduring legacy of military innovation. After hours that stretched like an eternity, the enemy's formation began to crumble under the dual pressure of the sudden counteroffensive and the erosion of their supply lines. The besieged garrison, emboldened by the sudden shift in momentum, launched a determined sortie that broke through the weakening enemy encirclement. As reinforcements flooded into the fortress, the rebel coalition was forced to retreat, their ambitions of liberation crushed by the resolute defense of the empire. The relief of the fortress became a turning point in the crisis, a moment when the indomitable spirit of the state reasserted itself over the forces of division and dissent. The victory, hard-won and bittersweet, was celebrated not only for its military significance but also for the message it sent, that even in the midst of trial, the empire's unity and resilience could overcome the gravest of challenges. Yet the crisis was far from over. The resolution of the siege revealed deeper, systemic issues that needed to be addressed if the empire was to endure. In the aftermath of the conflict, introspection permeated every echelon of government. Reforms were initiated to decentralize certain administrative functions and to grant more autonomy to provincial leaders, whose frustrations had been a significant factor in the unrest. These measures, though politically risky, were embraced by many as necessary steps to ensure that the central authority did not become so distant from its people as to foster alienation and rebellion. The process of reform was painstaking and often contentious, as entrenched interests and traditional power structures resisted changes that threatened to dilute their influence. Yet, guided by the enduring lessons of past generations, reformers persevered, reaffirming the notion that a state that listens to its citizens, that adapts to their needs, and that shares its power wisely, is a state built to last. Amid the external conflicts and internal debates, the cultural and intellectual life of the empire also faced its own trials. The prolonged periods of uncertainty and the palpable anxiety of turbulent times cast shadows over the artistic and scholarly endeavors that had once been the hallmark of the empire's golden age. The great libraries and academies, which had stood as bastions of enlightenment, now struggled under the weight of shifting priorities. Yet, even as patrons and scholars faced the distraction of crisis, many found solace and renewed purpose in the arts. Poets, whose verses had long celebrated the splendor of the state, now turned their pens toward the themes of loss, endurance, and hope. Their works, filled with poignant reflections on the transient nature of power and the enduring strength of the human spirit, resonated deeply with a populace battered by the storms of change. in the flickering light of candlelit halls and modest gatherings. These artistic expressions became the unspoken language of resilience, a collective affirmation that even in the darkest moments, beauty and truth could be found, and that the spirit of the empire was far from broken. Religious institutions, too, found themselves navigating turbulent waters. Temples and sanctuaries that had once been centers of communal worship and philosophical debate now assumed an even greater role in uniting disparate communities. Religious leaders, revered for their wisdom and moral authority, emerged as mediators in conflicts both big and small. They preached messages of forgiveness, solidarity, and the transcendent nature of the human soul, tenets that offered comfort and a path toward reconciliation in times of strife. Their sermons, interwoven with the ancient traditions of the land and the evolving understanding of the divine, served as rallying cries for a society in need of healing. In a time when external adversaries and internal divisions threatened to unravel the very fabric of the empire, these spiritual voices became symbols of continuity, a reminder that the legacy of a civilization is not measured solely by its conquests, but by the enduring light of its shared beliefs. The toll of these trials was evident not only in the stately corridors of power, but also in the everyday lives of ordinary citizens. Families, farmers, merchants, and artisans bore the brunt of economic disruptions and the uncertainty of an unstable world. Crop failures, the interruption of trade, and the constant fear of violence left deep scars that were not easily mended. Yet, it was in these moments of hardship that the true resilience of the Armenian people was revealed. Communities banded together in mutual aid, sharing resources and offering support to those most in need. Local councils, revived and empowered by the recent reforms, organized relief efforts, distributed food and supplies, and ensured that even the most vulnerable were not forgotten. This spirit of solidarity, an intrinsic part of the empire's cultural identity, became a cornerstone of its recovery, a living testament to the idea that in unity, there is strength. The path through these trials was neither linear nor without setbacks. At times, the pressures of external aggression and internal division threatened to overwhelm the carefully laid plans of reform. Political factions, emboldened by moments of weakness, clashed over the direction of future policies, and the discourse in the corridors of power grew increasingly polarized. Heated debates, reminiscent of the philosophical salons of earlier eras, now took on a combative tone as differing visions for the state's future were laid bare. Some advocated for a return to the centralized authority that had once characterized the empire's ascent, while others pushed for further decentralization in the belief that true resilience lay in local autonomy. In this crucible of conflicting ideas, the leaders of the empire were forced to reconcile tradition with innovation, to find a middle path that honored the past while embracing the imperatives of a changing world. It was in the midst of these heated debates that a new generation of visionaries began to emerge, young leaders, many of whom had been nurtured by the guidance of Cleopatra and her heirs, who now faced the daunting task of steering the empire through its most challenging period. These emerging figures brought fresh perspectives, melding the wisdom of the old guard with a keen awareness of modern realities. Their proposals, innovative and bold, ranged from the implementation of new agricultural techniques designed to withstand the caprices of nature to the establishment of cross-regional councils that fostered dialogue and cooperation across the diverse tapestry of the empire. Their energy, tempered by the hard lessons of recent trials, offered a glimpse of hope that the Armenian Empire, though battered, would not succumb to the forces of turbulence. As the crisis wore on, the cumulative effect of these multifaceted challenges began to galvanize a renewed commitment to resilience across every stratum of society. In the face of adversity, the empire rediscovered its foundational belief in the transformative power of collective effort and enlightened leadership. The crisis, which had threatened to fracture the state, instead became a crucible for regeneration. Reforms that had once been met with skepticism began to take root, as citizens and leaders alike recognized that the only way forward was to adapt and to innovate. The administrative changes, born out of necessity and refined by debate, eventually coalesced into a more inclusive system that balanced central authority with local empowerment, ensuring that the lessons of the past would guide the future. In time, as the turbulent clouds of crisis gradually gave way to clearer skies, the Armenian Empire emerged not unscathed, but transformed, its institutions strengthened by the rigorous tests of adversity, its cultural spirit enriched by the expressions of hope born from struggle, and its people more united in their shared commitment to a future defined by both strength and compassion. The trials of this era, though marked by hardship and sorrow, had also revealed the indomitable resilience of a civilization that refused to be defined solely by its conflicts. Instead, the spirit of the empire shone through in the determined efforts of its leaders and citizens, who embraced the challenge of rebuilding and reimagining their state with a fervor that promised renewal. As historians would later recount, this period of crisis and turbulence became a turning point, a time when the very soul of the Armenian Empire was laid bare and then reforged in the fires of adversity. The legacy of these trials endured in the collective memory of the nation, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, the capacity for resilience and transformation lies within the hearts of a united people. In the subsequent years, the reforms and innovations born of this turbulent period served as guiding principles for future generations, ensuring that the state would not only survive but flourish in the face of whatever challenges lay ahead. Thus, the chapter of trials and turbulence stands as a testament to the Armenian Empire's ability to navigate the storms of history with unwavering determination and hope. It is a narrative of crisis transformed into opportunity, a story of how a civilization, when confronted with seemingly insurmountable obstacles, can rise again through the power of unity, innovation, and an enduring commitment to the values that define its very essence. In the annals of history, this period is remembered not merely as a time of strife, but as the crucible in which the empire's true strength was revealed, a strength that would echo through the ages as a beacon of resilience and renewal. In the twilight of an era that witnessed the rise, transformation, and renewal of an empire, the legacy of Cleopatra of Pontus endures as a beacon of enlightened leadership, cultural synthesis, and profound human resilience, as the Armenian Empire entered the later chapters of its storied existence. Historians and citizens alike turned their eyes back to the defining moments that had set its course, moments in which the union of Cleopatra and Tigranes the Great had forged a new path not only for a nation but for the very idea of governance and statecraft. In the reflective calm that followed decades of conquest, reform, and renewal, the contributions of Cleopatra emerged as a timeless reminder that power, when infused with wisdom and compassion, transcends the fleeting triumphs of war and conquest to build a legacy that resonates through the ages. Throughout her life, Cleopatra was much more than a royal consort. She was a visionary whose influence permeated every facet of the empire's evolution. From her early days in Pontus, where she was molded by the rich traditions of her homeland, to her transformative role in the Armenian court, her intellectual brilliance, diplomatic acuity, and profound empathy became the foundation upon which an entire civilization was rebuilt and reinvigorated. Her guidance was evident in the cultural renaissance that blossomed in the halls of the royal palace, where libraries, academies, and art installations became symbols of a new era, a time when the merging of diverse traditions was celebrated as the wellspring of creative and intellectual power. As the empire reached its zenith, the influence of Cleopatra's ideas was woven into the fabric of every public institution and private endeavor. Her insistence on balancing martial prowess with cultural enrichment, her commitment to the welfare of both the governed and the governors, and her nuanced approach to diplomacy and reform left an indelible imprint on Tigranes' policies and on the administrative structures that followed. The administrative reforms she championed, grounded in the principles of justice, education, and local autonomy, proved essential during periods of crisis, enabling the state to adapt and persevere even amid external aggression and internal discord. In times of turbulence, when the empire was tested by siege and rebellion, The strategies inspired by her counsel not only repelled the enemies at the gates, but also restored hope and unity among the people. Beyond the immediate realm of politics and warfare, Cleopatra's enduring legacy is perhaps most strikingly evident in the way her vision helped shape the cultural and spiritual life of the empire. The great public festivals, the carefully commissioned monuments, and the flourishing of literature and philosophy were all manifestations of her belief that an enlightened society was one where art and science, tradition and innovation were inseparable. Her impact on education through the establishment of academies, the preservation of ancient manuscripts, and the nurturing of young minds ensured that the knowledge of the past would be handed down to future generations. A perpetual flame that would guide the empire long after the echoes of battle had faded. In every poem recited, every lecture delivered, and every debate held in the corridors of the royal court, the spirit of Cleopatra's dedication to the pursuit of wisdom shone through, inspiring countless individuals to view learning not merely as a privilege of the elite, but as a fundamental right of all citizens. The familial legacy she nurtured also played a crucial role in ensuring the continuity of her ideals. As a mother and mentor, Cleopatra instilled in her children the same values of duty, empathy, and intellectual curiosity that had defined her own life. The heirs of an empire, raised under her watchful and caring guidance, carried forward her vision of a state that was as much about the collective well-being of its people as it was about territorial expansion. Their policies, informed by the lessons learned in the quiet, reflective moments of familial bonding, reflected a governance style that balanced strength with sensitivity and authority with approachability. In doing so, they transformed the concept of rulership, elevating it from an exercise in power to a profound commitment to the common good. As time marched inexorably onward, the physical symbols of Cleopatra's legacy, the grand palaces, the stately libraries, and the vibrant public spaces began to merge with the intangible heritage of values, ideas, and aspirations that she had set in motion. The empire that emerged from the union of two powerful cultural legacies became a living monument to the idea that greatness is achieved not solely through conquest, but through the nurturing of a society's intellectual, moral, and cultural potential. In marketplaces, temples, and academies alike, the lessons of her life resonated. That true leadership demands not only the discipline of military strategy, but also the compassion of a guardian and the visionary outlook of a reformer. The enduring influence of Cleopatra of Pontus extends even to the modern imagination. In an age where the challenges of governance and cultural identity remain as pressing as ever, her life story offers timeless lessons on the synthesis of tradition and progress. The narrative of her journey, a tale of a woman who rose from the storied lands of Pontus to become a pivotal architect of an empire's destiny, continues to captivate scholars, leaders, and citizens alike. It serves as a reminder that the principles of justice, unity, and intellectual vibrancy are not relics of a bygone era but essential components of any thriving society. Her legacy is an open invitation to future generations to aspire toward a model of governance that embraces both the rigors of practical statecraft and the transformative power of cultural and moral vision. In reflecting upon the life and legacy of Cleopatra, one is compelled to recognize that her contributions transcended the immediate exigencies of her time. Her influence was not confined to the political arena or the battlefield. It was woven into the everyday experiences of the people, into the very way in which society conceived of progress and community. The enduring institutions she helped build, the policies she shaped, and the cultural renaissance she inspired have left an imprint that defies the erosion of centuries. Even as empires rise and fall, the ideals that Cleopatra championed, wisdom, compassion, and the unyielding pursuit of knowledge, continue to serve as a guidepost for those who seek to build societies that are both strong and just. Thus, as we draw this sweeping narrative to a close, the story of Cleopatra of Pontus stands as a testament to the power of visionary leadership in shaping the destiny of nations. Her life, marked by both remarkable achievements and profound personal sacrifices, is emblematic of the enduring truth that the legacy of an individual can become the cornerstone of a civilization's progress. In every strategic counsel offered to a war-weary king, in every reform enacted to uplift the downtrodden, in every cultural endeavor that sought to capture the beauty of the human spirit, her influence is unmistakable. Her legacy continues to remind us that the art of ruling is not simply an exercise in power, but a sacred responsibility to cultivate the collective potential of a people. In the end, the enduring legacy of Cleopatra of Pontus is not measured by the boundaries of land or the grandeur of monuments, but by the ideas and values that have come to define a civilization. It is the legacy of a woman who believed that through the fusion of diverse traditions and the relentless pursuit of wisdom, an empire could be built that was both mighty and humane. And as long as there remain those who cherish the principles of enlightened leadership and cultural unity, the spirit of Cleopatra will continue to illuminate the path toward a better, more compassionate world.